everyone, and welcome to Valoranting.
I do want to cuss. I personally think that is fucking bullshit. What can I do for you? What can I do for you? This is the best produced podcast I've ever been in.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Valoranting. I'm WTFmoses, joined by Pansy and Velly. Velly, how you feeling? You doing all right over there?
I'm dying, man. I think I choked on spit. I keep coughing, but I'm happy to be here. How you feeling?
I'm doing good. Pansy, how you doing?
I'm good. I've stayed alive through the roasting of the TSM Wardell fans, so I'm good. I'm all right. I've got my coffee.
Oh, Jesus. Save it for your segment.
Depression.
Just save it for later, okay? Jesus. We have a whole segment dedicated to the whole controversy of Pansy versus TSM and TSM fans. An absolute bloodbath in the streets of Twitter and Reddit and all the places where all the real discussion takes place. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, we got an absolutely packed show today. We just got off the back of the PAX Valorant Invitational. It was very fun to cast. It was a great tournament. Learned a lot of things. But we also have a bunch of stuff that's been happening in the Valorant community. And that's what we're going to be covering off first. The first thing that we're going to be talking about is the dev comms regarding ranked play and what they're going to be changing as we move into Act 2. And now, if you're wondering what Act 2 means, it is a very complicated system of acts and chapters and all sorts of stuff. But acts are basically like the major road marks. So let's talk about the changes here. Essentially, can you go back up just a little bit there, Dan? I want to read one of some of the. There we go. Right about there. So as far as the way that the ranking system is concerned now, you're obviously getting your rank. It's not very fun to maintain that rank right now, which is a big complaint. But the act ranks are going to be your resume, essentially, where at the end of a rank or at the end of an act, rather, you're going to get a full rank that will say this is your best 9 wins in your previous act. So let's say you're in Diamond or you're in Immortal, or God bless you, even if you're a Radiant player, if you have 9 good wins, you're gonna get a Radiant badge for your act rank or whatever, and it's gonna be on your character page. Pansy, what are you thinking about this resume type? I guess this is kind of kudos to those guys who are able to perform for a certain level for a certain time in each act, I guess.
I like it. It gives people something to track and some sort of history to it as well. I think it's good to give people something to be able to see marked improvement on. It gives you a reason to keep playing. It keeps you interested in the game. I think that, well, that's the whole thing, isn't it? With like rankings and matchmaking of any variety, it's to create longevity in the game and allow people a goal to aim towards, which is what it's doing. I think it's a good step in the right direction that they needed. They needed a win when it came to rankings, and obviously there's a couple of downsides, sure, but I like the intention. I like the idea behind it. I think it's going to give people, as said, that ability to look back and go, oh, okay, you know, let's say I call it a season, whatever they want to call it, chapter, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I think season's easier for me. And I think it's nice. I think it's, as said, it's a nice way to be able to look back and go, okay, well, you can see that I got substantially better during this time. I was playing this agent. It's good. It's a nice little piece for people who like to play those kind of matchmaking games.
Absolutely. And I mean, Velly, talking about the history, there's nothing worse than you're in matchmaking and you're looking for someone to play with, and you're like, oh geez, I'm looking for Diamond and above only, and someone's like, well, I was Diamond last season, but there's no way to verify that. Now you have a bit of a breadcrumb to go back and say, well, show me what you got. What do you think about that, Velly?
I mean, ultimately, I feel like that still doesn't mean much, but I still like it though, because it creates longevity when it comes to gaming, and it creates active player base. I know I might sound and look like I'm a walking billboard for Rainbow Six Siege with all my references and my backdrop, but I swear to God, I'm not. But Rainbow Six, they do something that's pretty interesting. So let's say I played rank. I was a rank head. I went up to platinum, and then I lost platinum because of whatever. At the end of the season, I still get my platinum charm. So let's say towards the end of the season is when the grind always picks up for everyone that wants to reach that top level, before whatever. Now this gives them another reason to continue playing as much as possible, because they want to still have those top games played. So I think honestly, there's no negatives. It's nothing but positives, and it's going to create an active player base for the entire shelf life of this game.
Yeah, it's going to be nice to have just you know, like I'm thinking long term. Like I remember my claim to fame was when in the first 3 seasons of Overwatch, I was a decent player, but then I completely stopped playing. So let's say I want to go back to it later and say, you know, I don't know, flaunt my diamond level achievements in Overwatch or something like that. At least I'll have that to look back on and be like, oh,
Nice.
back in my day, I was a diamond in Overwatch. But I could probably do that now with Valorant. We're like, oh, back in my day, I was silver 3. Okay, good.
By the way,
So
production almost messed me up. I was gonna blow my nose, and they put the camera right on me, right when I grabbed my tissue.
Oh,
that was
yeah,
kind of
they'll
messed
get
up, production.
you gotta go full mute, step off the camera, you know, just yeah, there you go. I like it.
There he
So now
goes.
we know what
There you
how Velly's maintaining his sinuses. Let's talk about our next thing, which is skins, everyone's favorite topic. We got some cool new skins. Actually, and you know what? Shout out to these guys, the artists that are making these things, because these skins are actually sick. Let's take a look at some of these Oni skins that we have.
Good.
That's
Damn,
Prius.
look at that skin.
Try again. There
So
it is.
beautiful. I want
Always
that.
watching. Always watching. But yeah, the Oni is a cool, it's just good looking. It's follows the Weeb storyline. You know, we have the kitty cat, you know, the pastel colored kitty cat skin, and now we have the angry Oni skin, which I believe is now in every single game. Has there been a game that's come out the last decade that does not have Oni skins in it, Pansy?
I think
Maybe Counter-Strike.
pretty much everything. I
Yeah.
actually don't know if there's. I honestly, like, I recently went back and played some Counter-Strike, and there's so many new, like, crazy skins out there now. I'm just like, holy
Right.
shit! I literally re-ranked recently because like I need to get back to a bit of CS. I want just that little bit of, you know, something to fall back into. And as said,
Yeah.
like, the skins are new, but I mean, honestly, yeah, as much as yes, the value point, the price point on these is really high. They are beautifully made. Like, whoever's doing this,
Yeah.
I know some of the guys who made some of the skins for Activision, who started off in splash damage. I've known a couple of the people who've kind of made these specifically, and honestly, seeing
Right.
something kind of new or like a little bit more detailed, something with like some active, you know, sort of effects on it, but it's not too much. I really like it. Again, I haven't bought really any skins in Valorant. I don't feel that I want to. I don't feel like, I don't know, like in Counter-Strike it felt like a flex, whereas in this it just goes,
Right.
you got your PayPal out. You know what I mean? I don't know why it shouldn't. Like CS:GO
Yeah,
was an element
Counter-Strike
of,
was
like,
more of like
I
an
spent, like, I don't know.
so much more. Yeah, it was more like a look at how lucky I am or look how rich I am. That was like the two.
Kind of.
That was the two things
Yeah.
you needed to kind of flaunt in Counter
Yeah,
Strike.
pretty much.
It's like I got lucky
And I
with this
mean, people
knife,
used to go
or I spent
crazy.
$800 on it. Yeah,
There's
I,
an
it's like I
economy.
still go into games
And-
in Counter-Strike, and
Cool.
just real quick, I mean, people like go crazy seeing me having like a howl or like my knife or my AK
have a
skin.
howl?
You know what I mean? Like, yes, I've got a nice little
Oh,
minware
damn.
howl. Look, I am a connoisseur of good skins. I mean, but again,
CS:GO
it's like I
Lotto or
really
what?
like that. No. I bought it for real money off my friend who was selling their inventory.
Oh.
I wasn't one of the scummy
Wow.
ones. Who'd have thought it?
Wow.
Yeah, no, I
Owls,
love
that's
I
very
love
impressive.
cool skins, and even like the new knives, like a new look to a knife. That's cool. Like
Pansy.
you'd think it'd all been done before, but they're trying stuff.
Pansy, I don't. Okay, I'm not a CS:GO head like you know, like y'all. I just googled the house skin. It's $100,000.
Okay, maybe that's a
Uh,
little much. That whichever one
Okay, I
you
don't think
found
that's
is a
true.
little off.
It says the M4,
Well-
A4. It,
Someone
sold
is
for
trying to
$100,000.
like jump the
Pansy's
price.
googling his
I'm like,
phone. Like,
wait,
it's time to go on a
wait,
fucking vacation.
No, I
All right, I
think
got
it
a little
would
excited,
sell.
dude.
It'd sell for
I
around
think that-
$4,000, somewhere around
Okay,
there.
Yeah,
that's-
sell
Like,
it
where'd you
immediately.
go?
Sell it immediately.
No,
I'm saying y'all crazy.
if it was the price that Velly thought, then yes.
But you know what though,
Yeah, of
Pansy?
course.
I
Like,
said,
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But that was the first thing I
Okay, I'm
thought
gonna
of
start to-
whenever I first played the beta. Dang, this is delay. I'm so sorry. But I
No,
really
it's all
feel like
good.
the one thing for Valorant that's really missing is an economy for skins. Is if there's a way to trade them, sell them, randomly
Never
get them
gonna
after a
happen.
few maps, like boxes. I know
Never,
it's not going to
ever,
happen,
ever.
but it's kind of like a game inside of a game. And a lot of people go crazy for it, man. But
Yeah,
No,
it's called
just a thought,
gambling. That's
you know,
why they had to
whatever.
take it out.
yeah, it's crack for kids. I mean, you can't be doing
No,
it.
for real.
CS:GO dances a very fine line. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was a bit of a thing going on. I'm pretty sure Korea's kind of been a little bit more heavy-handed on allowing the Radiant points potentially. I'm not too sure. I want to like look into that more. I saw a couple of tweets from people who are very up on the Korean scene in Valorant specifically, saying there's a couple of things happening, especially with the in-game currency around it. So I want to look into that more. But I'll be interested to see what happens in a couple of regions that obviously, since things like Counter-Strike and other games that have made a bit of a gambling-esque environment, having to be very like closely monitored now. I wonder if maybe that's a thing people are keeping in mind, especially in Korea potentially. But again, that's just something I read that again, I'm not going to verify it yet because I need to look into it more. But it'll be interesting to see if it keeps happening because, as I said, they have not introduced any economy. There's no unboxing. You buy what's in front of you. It's
There's
the
a
riot
reason for
system.
that.
So
there's a reason for that, and it's the fact that like looking at CS:GO and what kind of cap off the topic on this one is that they experimented with like an open economy based on loot boxes. They said do what you want, you can trade them, you can sell them, you can do whatever you like. It was a very open-ended economy, and then obviously the natural free market found a niche to exploit, which was gambling and a lot of creative ways around discovery and disclosure as to how you can win these skins and that kind of stuff. And then Valve just shut it all down. Okay. And then games like PUBG, that was like one of the last games that came out in that era where they had free market trading as well. And the same thing started to happen. So they locked it down. And now Riot has looked backwards and said, we want to capture every transaction. We don't want people trading. Yeah. We don't want people gambling. We want to have all the skins come through us. And you're going to be paying for Radiant points. You're going to be paying for Riot points, whatever the hell they're called. And we're going to capture 100% of that revenue. So in my opinion, there will never, ever, ever, ever be any way to trade skins in Valorant because Riot wants all those sweet bucks. I completely understand that as well. Let's talk a little bit now about Killjoy, the new agent that's been leaking out, and let's talk about all her sweet abilities. So Killjoy is this gadget-based, kind of like a Cypher-y agent. So this is a stationary boom bot. This is a horrible aberration that I don't want to talk about. But this is a stationary turret that turret that shoots for you. And then we have finally this. I imagine this is a molly, right, Pansy? Like it looks like a molly grenade thing. I'm not entirely sure how it works. It looks like there's a delay there.
It looks
you die pretty fast in that thing, though.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Again, I think once we get the full details from Riot, if people can data mine it, it'll be more interesting.
Right.
It's a nice utility kit, though. I really like every element of this, excluding the turret. I'm personally not a fan of them. That's just my thing. You know what I mean? It's a sixth man. Interesting little slow there too. This could be a really nice
slow.
Exactly. This could be a really nice not replacement, but option for Cypher mains. I think if you play a Cypher and you're kind of that solo site anchor potentially, or you're, holding down buying time for rotations, this could potentially fulfill a really similar role, and it could do it really, really well, especially with that turret that, again, not to my flavor, but I want to see how it plays first. It could be pretty, weak, potentially, but I do feel a turret in these sort of games is always going to be almost a sixth man. It's another point to aim at. It's another corner to clear, so we'll see how it folds in once we know more details of it.
Well, we do luckily have, I'm not sure if you can tell, but Velly is a bit into Rainbow Six Siege, where gadgets are the name of the game. So Velly, looking at this new agent, what are your thoughts?
All right, my thoughts immediately. I like her. The only thing that rubbed me the wrong way, and it rubbed me really hard, is the turret. I don't like things that shoot for you. I feel like that takes away a lot of skill. My hope is that my guess is that turret is extremely weak. It shouldn't do a lot of damage. But other than that, yes. But what I saw towards the end, that ability that slows people down, that's gonna be interesting. And my question is, will there be a counter to that?
Well, I look at the agent. I look at the agent as a site lockdown post plant connoisseur, if you know what I mean. Like all of her abilities are gonna be so. Looking at the turret, there's a decent pause. It has lots of very obvious look at me little things around it, so you're not gonna be able to wonder where it's coming from, which I think is probably intentional. It's all very brightly colored. So I don't think the turret is going to be as impactful, but it is going to be, for the first couple of weeks after release, a pain in the ass. So this ultimate ability, in my opinion, is
look at
insane.
this range.
So,
look at this range.
And I wonder if it can be destroyed. I'm not sure if it can or not. I know the turret can be. I think that
walls, so
destroying it.
Like you could post it up in hell, for instance. Like, let's say you're doing a post plant defense on Haven on A
anywhere,
site.
literally anywhere.
You could post it up in a corner somewhere in a post plant situation, and then have this AoE slow be looming over everyone who's trying to get in and do a retake or something like that. So I think there's a lot of cool ways that Killjoy can be used. I have a lot of question marks around the turret specifically. I think that's the only thing I really have a problem with. But otherwise, I think it's going to be a cool addition to have, if you're on defense on like Split, and you're running a Cypher and a Killjoy, like, you're going to have all sorts of crazy information. Obviously, what losses you're going to take afterwards is going to be interesting. I'm going to get you in a second, Velly. Pansy, what do you think about Killjoys integrating into the meta as it stands right now?
It's a good question. I think the offense potential is going to be interesting. I want to see what people do with it. Defense is pretty self-explanatory, I think, right now. Most people can look at it and see its viability. For the meta, it's going to make attacking harder, which, I mean, technically, yes and no. I don't know. I think I want to see creative uses of it. I want to know what that ultimate does in more detail. I think if you could potentially slow down rotations, it doesn't even have to be used in post plants. It could be potentially mid-round. I'm interested. I think, can Jet get through that? Is that going to play to Jet's abilities again, or does that affect Jet as well? Does it slow down the fire rate? I just need a little bit more detail before I really want to theorize too much. I think for the meta, it could slot in very well as another, solo site holder. I want to see if people actually opt to replace Cypher, because Cypher's cam is still exceedingly important. It's free info without a player having to be there, which is incredibly valuable. So if people think it is viable, I'll be really excited to watch people just kind of like find all the nuanced ways to play it, which I'm sure as soon as it comes out, all of those Cypher, sweaty players who sit there for hours finding these little cam angles and, all the keen stuff that I love to see will be going wild with that. I think you get so many more opportunities to put things into play. So I'll be excited to see what people come up with. I worry that turrets, honestly, anything that can be put into a map can be buggy as fuck. I mean, God, we used to have the Cypher cam with a pistol in it. I want to make sure, like, when it comes out, whenever you add a new agent or new element, they better have fucking tested that so hard, because if this goes live into patch, we don't have like a test patch or anything, a test realm to work things out on. That's gonna be straight into competitive play. And I really can't be bothered sitting there with, poor admins going, well, was that an illegally placed turret? Somehow it's propped up against like an inaccessible angle that can't be shot. Because these players will find it. And it's no discredit to the players, right? It's just like,
really,
it is, but I'm a little worried when the first time we saw some deployable items like the camera, it was very badly broken and it took a little time to fix. So I'm a little scared when it comes to turrets. But again, maybe baseless, maybe it'll be fine, maybe very simple to place.
Right. Velly, thoughts on Killjoy?
Yes. So looking at the chat and also hearing how Pansy was talking about how Killjoy could be extremely valuable on defense, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think Killjoy is going to be an amazing anchors, especially. But on attack, I'm thinking differently. I'm thinking that Killjoy is going to be the counter to all the strong oppers. For all the people that don't know how to use smoke grenades or flashbangs, I mean, imagine you're on ascent. You got Wardell sitting on the site. You put the turret out. The turret's going to tell you where Wardell is. And then you could just instantly peek rather than peeking blindly and trying to guess where to shoot, and then you get clapped immediately, right? Also that slow down ability. Imagine pushing a site and nobody could really move that fast. Oppers can't pull up their knife and run. I feel like there's just so much you can do with Killjoy. So that to me is going to be a meta that I'm going to be really interested to see. Is it going to have, are we going to have lineups full of just nothing but intel? You're going to have Sova, Cypher, Killjoy. The list goes on, and the way that they can all play with each other on both attack and defense, that's going to be key. I think that this is going to be the one agent that's going to drastically change the meta in a good way.
I think, and to kind of, I've been reading the chat as well. There's actually some really great discussion in there. I don't think that the turret is going to be a damage issue. I don't think it's going to be is the turret doing too much damage?
No.
you know, is the rate of fire the thing. The turret is all about distraction, because when you're going into a site, and if Killjoy is being used as designed, I imagine she's going to be more of a defensive agent than anything else. But if you're flying onto a site and you do have a Wardell or someone else on that site, and a turret distracts you for half a second, you're dead. Like that's the margin of error. Is that if you are looking one way to kill a turret that's all of a sudden shooting you, and Wardell is flying out from the other side or whatever, or literally anyone, if you're looking the wrong way on an entry into a site, you're going to die. So I like to think that Killjoy is going to be a lockdown agent, whereas a Cypher is more of an info agent. Like, you get a lot of info from Cypher, but if you're not really going to get the same abilities from Killjoy. But if you roll in to a site where she's holding, and I'm thinking like again, a site on Haven, like there's so many angles, and that thing has such a large AoE that you're not gonna be able to get to that thing, even if you can destroy it without getting AoE slowed. So having that thing out there is gonna be interesting. Now the question is, will it affect your allies as well? So I wonder a little bit about that. Realistically, we're gonna have to let the smart big brain Psalms of the world show us how to use Killjoy. But ultimately, there's a lot of questions, and having a shakeup like this with an agent makes things interesting. We're gonna have to see what it actually ultimately means, because they've been trying to make Viper relevant, and good God, is that not working? So let's move on a little bit now. We got through Killjoy. Let's talk about roster moves. It is time to address the fact that FaZe has signed a couple of players in the last little bit, in the last week or so. So we have Zachary, Mr. Zach Lombardo coming over. That's a nice choice. He had some good moments in the one tournament we did see him in. They did not FaZe did not play in the most recent PAX Invitational. Zachary, I believe, is an Overwatch player, right, Pansy?
I mean, you're asking the wrong person, right? My wheelhouse
I can't remember.
Not Overwatch, but I'm pretty sure you're right. I'm pretty sure most of these players are Overwatch based. They're not people I've heard of. They're not Crossfire players. They're not Call of Duty players. So again, this is like, it's quite an interesting prospect. You see most of these orgs picking up more classically easy to apply names, right? You know what I mean? With a dash of Overwatch, a dash of this, dash of that. It's nice to see someone going in for something a little bit different. So that could be quite fun to see how it pans out. I'm excited to see a full roster of people who maybe look at the game the way Sinatra does. Although Sinatra, maybe you're kind of one-off big dog, right? So a little tricky to chalk them all up to that level. But true. I mean, yeah, true. But no, I'm excited to see more teams. But honestly, it's just I completely honestly, and I know we'll come to this later, but it just makes me fucking jealous, man, because Europe's just getting, further down the fucking drain. We're losing all the teams that are meant to be the ones to change it, and here we are. So
it's a marathon, not a race, Pansy.
Yeah, but
it's kind of a
all
race.
our runners
kind
are
of a
just
race.
Yeah,
our
runners
race.
Can't
There's only so many orgs out there, Velly. There's only so many orgs out there, especially top end ones. Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, not all of us have 4 years for our esport to develop. And then we also have Marved. So this is the only non-Overwatch. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. So the chat did say this is the only non-Overwatch player. So Marved is a CS player. He's been in the wings. I'm not sure if he's an FPL level player, but he's definitely been like a higher level CS for a while. I don't know a ton about Marv personally. You know what I mean? Yeah, just a typical CS:GO man clicker. Yep.
That's the one clicks ahead. He's been great over in NA, but is not. Again, when I say over in NA, it's like, your rank S, your kind of ESEA impressive player, but did they ever make it onto the big rosters? Not yet. You know what I mean? And again, I'm out of the loop in even the Counter-Strike scene and the tier 2 scene that comes along with that. So I might have missed out on some of his potential highlights, but I know that he's not broken into the big end teams or big end events. So that's where the cutoff is. But as I said, though, the tier 2 scene is nuts. You know what I mean? So it's like FPLs, your rank S's, that's where you'll find these players who are incredibly mechanically good, but maybe didn't quite make it into those big teams.
Maybe they and that's the thing with CS is like it's hard to break into when you don't have like a special talent. Like I'm talking #1 draft pick level. If you're coming up new in CS, you got to be like simple or something like that. You got to be really insane.
Well, that's just briefly on that.
I'm
It was a
not
great
the CS
point.
expert, though.
No. This is something that I was watching by the numbers, which is another podcast by with Richard Lewis and Thorin, and they're discussing certain players, and the one that really kind of highlighted a couple of these points to me is that you've got to be like, it was discussing Smooya and kind of how he's in relation to the likes of Simple and Zywoo, who are these kind of like very, very powerful fraggers, and these crazy good players, but some of them never quite found the teams that they could potentially have been on because they wouldn't have gelled with the rosters or their attitudes or whatever it may have been. So when you look at Zywoo, had a really big, quick pickup towards the top end of Counter-Strike, is arguably one of the best areas right now alongside Simple. Now, Simple, of course, took a little longer to get there because, the attitude, there's a lot of, he was a very fiery player, but he was so shit hot, you can't ignore it to a point. You know what I mean? Eventually, his value outweighs whatever else. But the problem is most of these players who are like those high-end puggers, might be a little bit, feisty, a little bit fiery. There's still like, are you good enough to be picked up with all of those problems potentially being involved? And there are the exceptions, right? There are those, Simples coming in, there's couple of players who fall into these rosters who are so good. It's undeniable talent, but they're the exception to the rule. So I do want to see how the scene evolves down the line if we move away from these pug stars that are great aimers, but can they fit into a real sort of roster? You know what I mean? Do they really gel with the team?
Right.
I don't know these players too well. That's the thing over in NA. I could probably have a better shout at talking you through some of the EU players, but I'm interested to see how they do down the line. You know what I mean? Is it, because I said, Tens could be that example, right? He's too shit hot to ignore, but does he blend and gel with a roster like someone else might?
Right, and that's always going to be the question of like really high power players is do they fit into a team environment? Because ultimately you can be the best solo player in the world, but if you can't carry a team to victory or at least fit into a team and allow your skill set to meld into whatever that identity is, you're not really gonna. I think your ceiling. I'm not gonna say you're not gonna have success, but your ceiling is probably more limited to some of the more innovative teams. So there's some more Faze news, however. Now this is where things get interesting. And a little bit sousy. So there and this is all 100% unverified. Okay, this is Reddit comments we're talking about here. So let's take it all with a grain of salt. But this was a really interesting tidbit. So Fiona on Fire said that he has sources that tell him that Zachary is part of the Faze Valorant roster. So this ended up being confirmed. He also said that there are rumors that 2 Overwatch League pros are going to be joining him. Later in chat, the Immortals pro Asuna leaked that it's Baby Bay and Raucus, and Jacob Wolf said he had confirmation for Baby Bay and that Raucus was extremely likely. I'm not a huge Overwatch League follower, but these are both guys who are currently playing for the Houston Outlaws, or at least they're current Overwatch League pros, which is a big deal. They also speculated that Baby Bay retired and Raucus is still active, I understand. So they also speculated that FaZe didn't participate in the Valorant tournament, probably due to Raucus's Overwatch League contract. Asuna also leaked in chat that there was miscommunication between FaZe and Jason R. This is where things get really interesting. Something someone speculated in chat that I found interesting. The miscommunication was that Jason R was going to be the team captain like Hiko was supposed to be, but FaZe and or Corey wanted these Overwatch players, so Jason R decided to leave, unlike Hiko, who stuck around with the PUBG guys. Now, again, very grain of salt, the biggest grain of salt you can find, okay? Salt lick. And I'm talking about the fact that if Jason R walks away from that team based on the fact that they're all Overwatch League players, that is a bit of a question mark for, I mean, first of all, shout out to Jason R for having big brass balls just to walk away. If that were true, imagine walking away from a team without ever having played a single game under their banner.
I feel like that's such a stretch, right? Like, surely it's
Reddit comments.
I don't think he's going to go, haha, they're fucking Overwatch players, fuck them. He might have played with them a couple of times and just thought, I don't gel with this roster. I think also bear in mind some of these players are being like put in captain roles and then getting no choice towards their teammates, or you know what I mean? Like again, he's a player who's been on the professional scene. If he doesn't feel like he can succeed with it as a competitor, is that something you really want to chase down?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like he can go back to doing what he does. He played for Splice. He's played for Optic in Counter-Strike. He's a very good player.
Yeah, he's got like 1,500 viewers on Twitch. He'll be all right.
It's just like I said, for me, if he looks at a roster and goes, I simply don't have enough in common, I don't, feel like we could work as a team, then fair enough, you know what I mean? But I feel like it's more exciting to have the idea that mean Counter-Strike man says Overwatch bad, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the scenario is. So it's like I feel like we're really clutching at straws here when it comes to it, but I also feel like it kind of sucks to be told here's your teammates. You know what I mean? Like I hope that wasn't the case. I don't know.
The question, Velly, that I have is: do you think that maybe let's pretend for a minute that this is all true? Okay, Jason R. He's supposed to be the team captain. Clearly, he's now. If you're Jason R. and a team captain, and Hiko's a good counterpart to this, the first thing you're going to be thinking of is who do I know that I know from Counter-Strike that can come over and play with me because we have rapport with each other. You know, there's some proven history of success in some kind. We've seen that happen with teams like Envy, for instance. These are all guys that have, kind of circled each other in one way or another. Same with TSM, mostly comprised of Counter-Strike players. I guess they all are, really. But if you're Jason R, I think that you're at a point in your career where you want to be connected to success if you're going to be connected to a pro team at all. Because he's not out there starving. He's not, he's out there. He's a Reddit Counter-Strike guy. You see him all the time. So Velly, if you're looking at the Hiko model where you're kind of saddled with a team that outwardly isn't performing that well, if you're Jason R, are you walking away?
Yeah, Golden Boy said in the chat, and I 1,000,000% agree with him because I did it on my professional team. I don't think the captain role should be appointed to anyone, and that at the end of the day, we all want to win, right? We got to see who's the best person in that situation. Also, there's something that we also have to remember: clicks exist. Clicks are clicky. CS:GO guys, I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like, but I can imagine that there has to be some sort of bias towards who you would want to play with. And if you're not happy with that, then people do get up and go. One thing I also did want to point out, even though that was all just a rumor that we read from that Reddit post, Raucus, I was looking at their history. He started off on Faze in Overwatch.
Right.
So there are ties to this that shows that this might be even true to begin with. So I don't know, but I'm hoping he didn't get up and walk away for that reason, though, because it's why. There has to be a good reason behind it.
It's all a big question mark, and really, we're not going to know until the announcements start coming out and things start getting confirmed. So it's fun to think about. There's a lot of implications there, very interesting. But I'm excited to see what. Let's say they do full Overwatch. I think that team would be awesome. I think it would be great to have a pro team comprised of fully ex Overwatch players, because I bet we get the same level of innovation that we've seen from Sentinels, except maybe in a different way. They are all going to bring their own spin to it. We have some sadder news, unfortunately, talking about the EU scene or the lack thereof. FABRIKEN has decided to disband, which is a damn shame. So this is going to hurt everybody. And obviously, I've been spending a little bit of time around the EU scene. Pansy's been living in it. But let's just read it from FABRIKEN. The time has come. After not finding any orgs willing to sign the whole team and players receiving individual offers, FABRIKEN will close its doors for the time being. We will be playing our last official together the 31st of July. Thanks for all the support and all the love. Okay, so if you didn't know, FABRIKEN, one of the better teams in Europe, they definitely had some of the better talent as well in both Meadow and Zipan, who appeared to have received either an offer for the pair or individually, so they'll be leaving the team. Zipan, one of the top fraggers in Europe. I imagine we would see them go to a partially complete team. I don't think it's going to be G2, because if they ace David P out from under him like that, dude, after 2 tournament victories, I'm burning that building to the ground. So if they have a building, I'll have to look into it. But yeah, Pansy, I'll let you go on this one. Sad tale for FABRIKEN and losing these guys.
It is. I mean, if anyone kept up with, maybe just the series outside of just the Ignition series, if you watched a kind of more grassrooty, big open bracket style tournaments, FABRIKEN were a consistent element in a great deal of those. I think Rise of Titans, Wave Esports, a couple of these events that were, as I said, they didn't have the 80K viewers, but they were good. They were very, very solid teams that were probably going to be the up and coming ones in the future. And yeah, FABRIKEN was mostly Swedish, I'm pretty sure, and some of these were, the kind of ex Counter-Strike players again, but I think a couple of them played for your, academy teams. They weren't high end, but they also weren't just kind of low end. They weren't just potentially like Puggy. They were in a couple of semi-decent teams, also around probably the Fish 123 UK boys. I'm sure they also kind of had an awareness of those, up-and-coming teams that were very young. And some of them definitely stood out more than others, but it is a big shame to see this team potentially fall apart. But I think we highlighted this.
What's apart?
I don't know how long ago. Yeah, I mean, we highlighted this so much earlier that sadly EU teams aren't being picked up as 5. They're picking up your kind of streamer, influencer. Or not, I say influencer very loosely. Bear in mind, don't take that as they're picking up a random streamer. Exactly, just like they're picking up a brand name and then building a roster around it. Yes.
Yeah, they're just trying. They want to get the eyes on the team, and obviously a guy like Scream is going to bring millions of eyeballs. Well, potentially upwards of 1 million eyeballs, considering all his following. Zipband and Shadow and Meadow and all those guys, I imagine they're going to find success. Zipband, I mean, the first time I saw him, he was playing under a different name in like one of the very first tournaments that I casted right when Valorant came out, and he was an immediate standout. So I really expect big things from him. It's unfortunate. And I've been getting a lot of crap about how you pronounce the team name. So I'm going to try it one more time in Ryan Central out there, since he's very concerned about it. Let me try to say the team name again. It's disbanded, I believe is how you say the name. So unfortunately, we will never see Ryan Central's concern about the pronunciation of FABRIKEN. But anyway. So shout out to those guys. So let's move on from that. That's the roster moves bit. And now this kind of brings us into our next topic of discussion, which is a question that popped up on Reddit once again. Shout out to Reddit for basically filling our show with content. Are there any natural pros? Someone who didn't come from somewhere else? Maybe it's too early for that. The answer is yes. It's too early for that. The game's been out for 3 months. 3.5. Actually, let's say 4 months. And I think that we're probably not going to see too many natural Valorant pros, at least for, I would say, maybe sometime in the first year, but into ages. It's going to be a while. Ages. Yeah. If you,
for a PC game, like, what the fuck does this question even mean?
Like, who's not played something before? Like, who hasn't come from another game at this point? Yeah,
tell him, Lauren.
I don't get that. Honestly, it's like,
what kind of question is
like
this?
who? What do you think people literally just got a PC to play Valorant?
Just turned it on. If you're like picking 3 months later, like, I'm doing pretty good. Time to go pro.
This is just fucking. This is some dumb shit. I don't get it. I mean, and I feel like people are so desperate to denounce the other titles. Like, well, Valorant doesn't need to be compared to Overwatch or Counter-Strike. It's its own game. Sure, but let's stop fucking being stupid about it. We don't need to compare it, but we also have to realize that most people who are good at FPS games have probably played one of these games, whether it be fucking Quake if they're ancient, or maybe came from like fucking Medal of Honor, Crossfire. You don't just suddenly get good at games. You can grind, sure. They'll be like eventually. And my example comes down to things like, and I fucking hate to say it again, but like Counter-Strike. You know what I mean? Like every single time, it's the only example. And only in the last couple of years of its whole thing for CSGO have you ever seen like a thoroughbred CSGO player. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they've all played Source or 1.6 because it's such a rarity to find this one diamond who
when you were
nothing.
6 years old,
Counter-Strike
was around. That's the thing. Like, Counter-Strike's been out for 20 years. So there's a chance, like, you see your little baby Pansy, for instance, you see your cousin playing Counter-Strike, like, I want to try that. Next thing you know, you grow up to be a Simple or whoever else. And you know what? I personally want to take the bull by the horns here, Velly. I think that this is an important topic, which is why today I am announcing my candidacy as the first natural Valorant pro. And as someone who plays the game, sometimes I think that I have the ability, considering my blank slate of skill, to make myself into a Valorant pro. So I just want to be the first person to announce my candidacy. So Reddit, I am the first natural Valorant pro. No. Okay. We're talking to Velly now. Okay, Velly.
This is Overwatch Diamond time.
This is controversial.
That was before I became. That's before I made a Twitter account, so it doesn't count.
So this is my thing now, Moses. Have you ever made a penny or more in another video game?
No.
Oh shit! Then that's true. Then all right, never mind. I was gonna say we could use a scale where we can only talk about tier 1 pros from other games, not tier 3 and tier 2. Now that's an argument. That's an argument I would love to have. But ultimately, I mean, you're gonna have people that were really good at another game that comes to Valorant and become really good at that too. I mean, it's just the way of life. Like Lauren says, you don't buy a fucking Xbox and all of a sudden become the best at Halo and then you're a natural Halo pro. It doesn't work like that. You work your way up. You get really good in one game and you transfer those skills to yet another game until you eventually become a pro gamer. That's how it all works. Naturally, we're gonna get those people that never made a penny in any other video game out there, wasn't even in tier motherfucking 100, right? Those players are gonna come out like a year from now once they start to get notoriety. But right now it's fucking impossible because you're gonna have to beat the biggest names in esports that are currently transferring over. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting discussion if we want to rate it off of what tiers they come from, and do we use that as a measuring stick?
I mean, wait
I don't know.
till these people who want these fucking, like, homegrown talents out of nowhere go to LAN and they shit themselves for the first time. Like, that's gonna be my pride. And you're like, why are these experienced veterans beating this young hot player who's up and coming, who's never left his basement to play this game before? It's like, what do you think's gonna happen? What do you think's gonna happen in the first LAN? Like, fuck me, of course it's gonna take time. People want to rush it so badly. I don't know what it is. Is this like insecurity that this game is always going to be in the shadow?
I've been playing dozens of times a month, okay? I've been practicing.
It's weird.
So we'll see you at LAN. I've been to LANs. I have the experience to take it to the next level. And just don't shit talk me. Okay, so let's talk now about this. I don't know if we've left enough time for this topic, because we do have a very special treat coming up after this one. It's going to be difficult to get through this one without all of us yelling at each other, or in general. Let's talk about some caster bias. It has recently come out, okay, that one of our very own, Pansy, has been embroiled in... Hold on, I gotta change my voice. Has been embroiled in controversy here, and it appears that we have an epidemic of casters trash-talking players. And you know what? This is a situation, Pansy, that is just uncalled for, and realistically... caster bias is ruining esports, and it's all because of you. Let's talk about that now. Just to give you some context of this information, one TSM Wardell was very upset at some of the comments that Pansy made regarding her teammate, I believe Cutler, and she was out there calling him trash tier, saying all sorts of horrible things, and TSM fans are in an uproar.
You said trash tier? Did you really?
I fucking didn't.
Okay.
No, of course I fucking didn't. I said nothing at all. Look, I literally quote what I said. Cutler, top fragging. Why is this happening? And then went on to elaborate. Normally, that would be Wardell or Sabrosa. That was enough that I'd make a 2-page explanation for TSM fans because they're mad about it. Like, are you fucking shitting me?
Is this disrespect doc, Pansy? Is that what you decided to label your document as disrespect? Is that what you're perceiving this as? Is disrespect to you or disrespect to the players which you've been trashing on for so long, Pansy?
Bruh.
let it all out. Let it all out, Laura.
No, okay, so here's the thing, right? For most people, most sensible people is what I imagine I'm talking to most of the time. Most sensible people understand storylines. They understand that we are not biased to a team, we are biased to results and storylines. And sometimes, let's look at what that storyline in specific was. TSM had only lost that map twice in the past, very rarely as well. It had been quite a good map for them. Their win conditions were normally Sabrosa and Wardell doing quite well. Their attacking side, they generally went even, if not succeeding as linked in the fucking document. And then in the game against Envy, while TSM were on the attacking side, they got the first 3 rounds and then shit the bed for 9. So clearly, something was going a bit wrong. Now, we look at what those components of their win conditions traditionally were, because we are not biased, we are simply looking at the fucking screen. We're looking at the fucking results of TSM, probably one of the favorites in this tournament, coming in, arguably best in North America by rankings and results, are losing to Envy, a newly picked up team who also are very good, but haven't quite had the results yet on this map, and again, against teams of this caliber yet. And a big standout point was Sabrosa and Wardell had been shut down. The economy was completely muted, and Envy had been keeping control of them the entire time, which meant someone like Cutler was top fragging, which isn't one of their win conditions. You don't want your support kind of set players who kind of put these plays in motion on the attacking side, bear in mind, because people are going, well, actually, a Cypher on defense, what if they're just not coming to the site? I didn't make it on that side. That was not the point, you fucking stupid asshole. The point was that their win conditions were not coming into fruition. They needed those to happen, and they weren't. And that was credit to Envy. So there we go. There's the long and short. Most sensible people realize this. Then there's the not.
Thank you, Pansy. I was not really paying attention during your at-length explanation, so I'm going to assume that you were admitting here to being biased, and it's clear now that we're going to need another YouTube video shoddily slapped together using a shred of information to garner some more clicks. And as a YouTube veteran, I fully agree with the notion that you're very biased.
Let me let me give you a little dash of some of those comments, just to give you an idea of the people who aren't reasonable humans with a bit of sense. Well, it is a woman after all. Not really surprised she would mock men or even be able to understand the game. That was the first big comment that really got my attention. The second one, can we just leave Pansy in CS? Literally most annoying caster. Another good one. Followed up by, I get so annoyed when I game because of people with Pansy's mindset. Fuck, he's got me there. But I got the kill. Who gives a single fuck if you got the kill, bro? It had no impact. None of the kills had impacts. That's the point. They won 3 fucking rounds and a half. You dipshit, you've agreed with me, you dumb cunt. These people, dude, like the thing is that normally I'm like,
Pansy, it sounds like what you're saying is actually that in the absence of real logic to just rely on things like sexism to make your point. So I think that is a very
What?
Oh my God. First of all, don't ever, here's another YouTube tip from the YouTuber. Don't ever read the comments. Don't read the comments. That's the first rule of YouTube. Do not read the comments. Okay. Now I have Velly, I'll let you have your piece in just a second, okay? But here's the reality. Okay. It doesn't matter. Okay. First of all, I'm gonna take a page out of Pansy's book. Is here. I'm going to take it a little bit differently. My opinion is that I have nothing to defend. Our job as casters is to, well, I'm not a caster, but I was. So let's talk about the fact that you're supposed to be establishing storyline. You're supposed to be translating for the people that have no idea what the fuck is going on. You want to talk about game sense? Have some sense to say something that's realistic, something that is within the realm of reality. The teams are going to rise and fall, okay? You're going to have different stories that have to be told in different ways to buff up and create hype. And sometimes that's going to mean shitting on your favorite team just a little bit or pointing out the fact that one player isn't performing. We're in a performance-based environment. If you're not performing, it's going to be addressed, okay? That's the way it works. And if you don't like it because you're a fan of the team, I don't give a shit, okay? It's not about you. It's about the collective. It's about building up the storylines, building up the players, building up the fact that this thing is new and we want to make it interesting for people who might not have any idea what's going on. So realistically, a person like Pansy is going to be bringing experience from a long career in esports, and unfortunately for some of these guys who are fans of teams and whatnot, it's not going to line up with their perfect view that their favorite player is the best in the world. It's just not going to happen. So realistically, I don't think you have anything to defend, Pansy. You're out there, you're telling the story, you're pointing out flaws, you're bringing your experience, and if they don't like it, they can shut the fuck up and get back to the YouTube comments where no one will ever hear what they have to say because they're not Pansy.
I love it. Why just stop? Keep going.
Okay.
Anyway, I want to give you some time to talk. I've been yelling.
No, I was gonna say I felt like this topic was made for me too. I love it. Golden Boy in the chat. Golden Boy definitely knows about my past esport and the way I ran about things over there. Okay, and I just want to say for everyone, just to echo off my man Moses just said, just shut the fuck up. It's really annoying. My first ever cast was in Toronto, and I'll never forget it. One of the most liked pro players, not one of the most liked, but he was real popular. He played the game terribly that day, and I called it out. I was straight up. I have no affiliation with them. I make sure my feelings aren't with the players as friends or whatever. So that way, when I see a player playing bad, I'm able to speak on it right without feeling bad about it. And I love to keep it that way. And when I was giving advice on how he could have played those rounds better, that map better in general, people were like, oh, Velly, you don't know the game. Don't talk about him like that. We like him. I don't give a fuck who you like because I'm going to tell it how it is. And you know what? The whole woman line really pissed me off. Because there's an analyst. It's a
fucking parachute for no argument.
Yeah. Yes, and it's so fucking annoying because everything she says that's legit. They fucking jump on her, and I would say the same thing that she says, and they don't say anything to me. And it's just like you're discrediting everything she's saying because she's a girl, and then you put that in your sentence somewhere, some way, subtly. I hate that shit. But at the end of the day, we want esports to be as big as sports. We want it to be as big as the NBA, big as the NFL, you know, whatever your favorite sport is. In order to do that, we have to criticize the players and call out faults. If we don't do that, we're handing out participation trophies to every fucking body, and it delegitimizes what we do. If we can't do it, then who will? Reporters, they have to call out when LeBron James goes 0 for 10 at the line. Imagine if they were like, oh, maybe LeBron just had a bad day. Yeah, you know, we don't know what was going on in his head.
Like that. Yeah.
With his friend, he did okay. No, fuck that. And we're going to say that because we're saying what everyone else is seeing and what we're seeing. So fuck that, man. I hate that.
The irony of all of this as well is that I actually don't. This is the fucking weird part. I actually feel a little bit for Wardell because honestly, Hayes and Cutler also receive really unfair criticism because they do fulfill a certain role. That's the thing. Like their role isn't to top frag. So when he does top frag, it's like, well, he's not. That's not the roles that normally work for TSM. Again, so it's like, it was just taken such a poor way from so many audiences. Again, clickbait happens, clip monkeys happen. It's gonna just kind of fuck it all up, but without context it does suck, and it's unfortunate because, as I said, Cutler and Hayes are both great players and what they bring to the TSM roster is huge, and they could be the tipping point for them getting back into the current meta that might have been set by the Sentinels off the back of this. But even that aside, as said, it's just these kind of like dumb hot takes that unless you sit there and you fucking pander the whole time through, which is just fucking boring, you're always going to get this. That's the thing that's frustrating, and it's like I had this in Counter-Strike once where it's like, you fucking hate Astralis. I can tell the way you talk about them. You just fucking and like the only team that I've ever personally liked to play games with is Astralis. Like Dupree was like the person I played PUBG with. We played Counter-Strike. Like out of anyone that I would be potentially biased towards was Astralis, and everyone's like, "No, you were mean to them this game." I'm like, "Yeah, because they're the best in the world and they fucking lost." Like that's the overall storyline. Of course, I'm gonna highlight it when that happens.
No, what I don't think the regular followers don't follow Lauren. I really think that they don't look at consistency and expectations that the casters are used to seeing day in and day out. I don't think that they also realize that I used to be a pro gamer, and once I became a caster, I've looked at games entirely differently. So what
100%.
we see and the expectations and where we know what's supposed to happen, when it doesn't happen, we call that stuff out. And then they think that we're super mean because of that, or we're ragging on somebody or a team. That's not the case. We're hard on them because we expect more, and I don't think that they will ever process that.
I think so. And you know what? I think that while we cap this topic off, we really need a solution. Okay, so here's my my proposal for you specifically, Pansy. We need some sort of special squad. We need something that is going to be, maybe we call it the squad of investigations for misogynistic acts against Pansy, or simp for short. Okay, so we all need to come together and simp for Pansy is what we need to do. We need to make sure that we are on a misogynist patrol for Pansy. So if you're looking to join my simp patrol for Pansy, just shoot me a follow on Twitter and we'll talk about it in our clubhouse. Okay, we have a special treat, and we've been talking a lot about a lot of different things, and we actually have another fun guest to bring in, and he's a very special lad. You might know him from making sure that your Counter-Strike viewing experience is top tier. The man, the myth, the legend, one Prius, the CSGO observer, is joining us on the line. Let's have a quick chat to him. There he is. He's staring right in your soul. That is a live video, and he is actually a very practiced mime and statue. So, Pansy, I'm going to let you lead this. But first of all, let's say hello to Prius. How you doing, my friend?
Hello. How you guys doing? I'm doing great. What's up?
I'm doing
He's
great.
just so chill.
Hello.
I'm doing great.
Hi, David.
Thank you for bringing the energy.
I love your eyes, David. They're very pretty.
This picture was taken
all,
before COVID, so
okay,
skinny me.
Oh, good. All right. So I'm assuming that you're now like ripped. You got a 6-pack. You're just doing bicep curls. You're running the observer. Yeah, I like it. So Prius, exactly. Before I hand it over to Pansy to yell about silhouettes, let's talk a little bit about your background. Give me the resume. Where do you come from? Where do you go?
So I'm a professional Counter-Strike Global Offensive observer, and I make sure you can watch all the sick pro plays that all the players practice their entire lives for. And yeah, this was the major that I observed.
There you go.
I think this
that
was,
major I observed.
Yeah.
That major I observed. Yeah, just one of the most important
major.
Counter-Strike events in the world. Not a big deal. It's just something I do on the side when I'm not grinding.
This was
cool,
my
main
first
point.
PGL major. Oh, carry on.
Yeah, I think the main point is like the importance of observers and what a good observer can do, and like the difference that you guys bring specifically. Even in that clip, kind of hyping up such an important fight, and I mean, we were just talking about storylines in a very weird way, but you guys kind of bring that through to your own work as well. But again, just coming into let's take I don't know, that round in specific was quite a good one, but just kind of take people through kind of the flow of what you think about as, let's say, a round starts between, I don't know, whoever you want, like two teams, right? Let's say Astralis and SK Gaming at that time, whatever it may be. And again, we can apply this to Valorant later, but you know, what's the theory when you come into a game? Let's say it's the first gun round. What are you looking for? What are you trying to tell here?
I'm looking for so SK versus Astralis or MIBR versus Astralis. I'm looking for the op duel between Fallen and Device. So that's like the main thing I'm looking for. Making sure I capture that full story, and then I obviously try to capture the executes and then the site defense and everything.
So when we go into like execution side defense, applying that to like Valorant right now, I don't think we've got many people who've done it brilliantly yet. I know we tried to discuss with the observers in the PAX tournament if they could do those kind of overview shots, if they could try and set it up. But again, there's reasons we do it, and I mean, do you think it's as applicable in Valorant at the moment? Because there is a great deal of utility, but it's also messy. Have you found it kind of hard to apply that same theory into Valorant you had potentially in Counter-Strike?
Right. So I was doing the Pulse Invitational a couple weeks ago, and I was doing it with Heather Sapphire, and we both did the free cam, and then the main observing, and it's very hard to do the pip cam because like I guess the observer client isn't too good yet, so you can't see who's who yet, and it's just hard to tell like what abilities are being used currently, like if Brim still has a smoke or his smokes or his mollies. So it's super hard to use the pip camera right now. And in CS, you can do it very easily. I have a stream deck that I use in CS where there's like 12 to 15 different camera angles per map that I can use that I can tell a story way better. Versus, but in Valorant it's harder because that's not set up yet. So we have to rely on the pip observer to show the story between like the executes and the setups. So I'm hoping Valorant gets that one day where I can just choose between, you know, I want to go to X, Y, Z position and show the setup and everything.
Okay.
So I have a couple of questions regarding. Yeah, I was going to say. I guess for those of us who are not like 100% like understanding as to what is the difference between good observing and bad observing. Let's talk a little bit about, and I don't want to, you know, everyone's learning, and you know, sometimes observers don't have the same level of experience. You've been doing CS majors. You're probably one of the best in the world at the art. So let's talk a little bit about the current trends in Valorant observing. What have you noticed, and what would you change?
So I've done a couple of Valorant events, and I've been trying to show like the cipher setups, you know, like where he places his trip mines, where he places his traps, and I always try to switch to like whoever's ulting. So if I hear like a Reyna or like if I hear a Raze ult, the big old RPG, you know, she's gonna kill someone.
Right.
And so I always try to show the setups pre-round and everything.
Okay, so I suppose then, kind of going back to the first part of my question, have you noticed any trends in Valorant observing that you would change, or you think maybe is not as productive as maybe you would run your observing team?
I see a lot of like free cam observing where they just during execute they're all on the free cam the entire time, and so we can't see the player's skill, and that's an issue. It's like in CGS, they use a lot of free cam where we couldn't see the actual player's skill, you know, first person. So I've seen that a couple of times in Valorant where they leave it on the free cam, and I don't like that too much because, like I said, you really can't see the player's skill. And
I got it.
Some Valorant observers don't storytell, so like they don't show the cipher cam setups. They don't show the flank. They don't show like a flank building and everything. So
okay. So I'm gonna let Pansy and you talk about this, but I want to lead in with the question. So I want to ask about the use of silhouettes and X-ray. Do you think
X-ray.
that And really, how should X-ray be utilized in Valorant as it stands?
Well, in CS, I like to toggle X-ray. If an operator is holding an angle, I like to just keep X-ray off for like 10 to 15 seconds while they're holding the angle, and if they get that quick flick, you know, that small little particle that the player is showing, who is peeking against the operator, I like to show that because it shows how quick operators are. Everything.
Okay.
Yeah,
Pansy?
I just on that note, so Counter-Strike, let's be honest, I mean, for a while until like you, obviously Sapphire, Sliggy, Rush, kind of made like the standard for how to observe it, with, you know, X-ray being used quite sparingly or, you know, in the right scenarios. It took some time, and people are still not necessarily 50-50, but, you know, some people like to just watch it with X-ray on, and shout out to the man, I think this is Sliggy's one, right? The perfect nade catches is in chat. He was waiting for his clip to come in, you know, he's waiting there, he's like, look what I did. But let's also talk about like the problem of getting the audience too used to having X-ray on. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people are just gonna think that it's almost normal that these players play like this.
Oh my god!
I'm worried that it's almost too late.
Can we just talk about the fact these guys are chilling on the stairwell, getting naded to shit, and they're not actually doing anything? I mean, anyway, it's just my observation. Sorry, you can go back to this. I was just making an observation.
Pistol round. They're trying to do a little execute towards the site to get a plant and maybe a nice little post plant. But, you know, they got naked to fuck. So here we are. But, no, I mean, do you think it might be harder to introduce, you know, toggling on and off X-ray to potentially a Valorant audience at this point? Or do you think it's still early enough that you can maybe work it in more?
I think it's definitely early enough. I think the issue right now is we can't toggle X-ray in Valorant. I think I've tried hitting the X button to try to toggle it, and that doesn't work.
Nice.
Like it doesn't Counter-Strike. So I think it's always on, unless I miss.
Oh, that's interesting. Always on X-ray
feature.
Touch.
Velly, do you have any questions for our man Prius here?
Yeah, one of my main questions, and it had to do with the storyline question at the beginning. So the casters, the hosts, the analysts, we create our own storylines. Do you personally have your own that you follow, or do you do your best to try to gel the two together? Because it's different. If you haven't
together.
Oh, you do? Okay. So like, okay, that's really all I wanted to know, because I know that going into this game, you were personally excited about something, but the storylines being set around these other two players from, you know, their respective teams. It's like, who do you give priority to?
So like in a C9 versus let's see, C9 versus TSM, I would definitely try to highlight the op duels still. Tens versus Wardell, because they're both sick players, and I guess Wardell never misses, according to him.
Apparently,
so,
as reported.
So I like to really showcase the op duels. Because it really showcases their skill and everything.
Absolutely.
Right. Also, I just want to just do a quick plug. Shout out to Paradox in the chat. He's a CDL caster as well. The guy is phenomenal. So, yeah, shout out.
I love Paradox.
Shout out to Paradox.
So really briefly,
Pansy, go ahead.
Hey, Paradox. I just want to talk about upcoming features. What's the priority that you think you guys need to be able to tell a better story right now? Because I think that obviously the tools you guys are given are very poor at the moment. They're very, very early. But what's the priority? What is like the top 3 things this game needs to have in succession in your mind to make it easier for you and also the viewers at home to be able to understand what's going on?
I think my main first one right now is that the spectator doesn't get flashed. Because right now, when like Phoenix throws a flash, or Omen throws a blind, the spectator also gets flashed if they're observing that player that got flashed or blind, and then the entire UI just disappears for like 3 seconds, and that's terrible because I can't see who I'm observing, and I can't see who to switch to. So that makes it really difficult to switch. And in CS, there's like an icon in the middle that shows how blind they are. I think that should come to Valorant as well.
Oh yeah.
Second thing.
Well, I mean, the flashes in Valorant work a little differently as well. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. the second thing probably is I want to be able to choose like set coordinates in the map and bind those to like
Right.
F1 through
Oh.
F11.
Just having
And
quick
then I wanna
free cam lock locations that you can switch to very quickly.
Right, yeah, just so I can
Okay.
tell a much better story. And third, probably third and fourth, probably is I don't know. I want numbers on the minimap. Right now, I'm playing Pictionary. So there's two ciphers. I need to choose which cipher's who. It was actually difficult. I was observing like the last round, super intense last round. Tens went in with a judge. He was like going off on a judge, and I switched to the other jet on accident. Who he got a kill, but Tens got like a 3K or something like that with the judge because he flew in, and I just chose the wrong jet because I forgot which color he was. But I was like, oh man, I that'd have been much better if I chose, Tens just flying in with the judge. How crazy that gun is. And then the fourth thing, probably on top, where the agents are. I don't like the X. But I don't think they should disappear either.
Yep.
I think they should definitely just maybe fade out, but still be there, just so the live players are like in full color highlighted, versus just the red X, because the red X is kind of hard to see too.
Yeah.
So just off the back of that, I know obviously, Sapphire and you are kind of the NA duo right now, especially when it comes to I guess not just observing, but you guys have like a really good mentality to what makes a good spectator client. Have you been able to talk to Riot about this? Have you had like a good line of conversation at all with them to be able to create like a feedback thing, or have you got anything like building with them? Because as I said, like I know that Sapphire's probably got an easier way to relay things, but obviously in a professional manner, what's the best way you think? Like, have you actually had that conversation yet with Riot?
A couple writers followed me on Twitter. I haven't reached out to them yet, but I wish I could help them out a lot more. Obviously, Sapphire has a way easier way to reach out. Obviously, because her husband made the game, or sorry, makes the maps.
That's a good connection right there.
Yeah.
You'd imagine the spectator client would be better if she was there just like, hey, do you want to just fucking fix that shit, dude? Do you want to
my
just
God,
bump that
right.
up the priority list?
I love
involved
my
like 4 months
fiance to
ago.
death, but if I'm working and there's someone, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're talking over my shoulder, I'm like, get the away from me. Just like, Jesus Christ. Oh my
But
God.
yeah, I wish I had a better connection with Riot. Obviously, I've never worked with them because I've been doing Valve events and CS:GO. I guess I've never really talked to Valve either. Only time we talked to Valve is at majors, and I don't think they're at the last one. I'm pretty sure they did it from home. So Valve's really hard to reach out to. I assume Riot will be easier because all of them have Twitters versus Valve employees. It's rare to see them on Twitter. So it's just the idea of reaching out.
Or anywhere, from what I hear, I should say.
They're mysterious, those
Yeah.
Valve lot.
The mysterious smoke. There's like a back room filled with smoke, and Gabe N is sitting on like an iron throne, and just like, the supplicants are bringing him various proposals for the Steam Summer Sale.
Yeah, that's it.
Prius, I guess I'll open it up to my my co-host here. Any final questions for Prius before we let him go?
Oh no,
I'm gonna take
Prius,
this.
you're
I'm
amazing. Keep
gonna
up the
take-
great work, dude.
Yeah, man. I was gonna
Thank
say we look forward to seeing your work, and obviously your insight and everything is extremely valuable. And I hope that the observing tools can get us to a point where we can have the Prius magic grace our Valorant events and have some of that high level observing that helps. And I mean, it really is the cornerstone of storytelling when it comes to casting. And having been in PUBG with Pansy and in other games where if you don't have a good observer, your cast is not going to be nearly as good. So from all of us here, my man, we appreciate you coming on the show, giving us your insight. We hope to see more of you. And I hope that some of those rioters following you on Twitter can see some of your advice as well. Thank you for piercing our souls with your steely blue gaze. And I guess we'll see you around the bend, my friend. Thank you so much for jumping in.
Cool. Thank you guys for having me. Hope you guys have a nice day.
Of course. You too. I'll
It
talk to
was
you
so
later.
weird talking to someone that's just staring at you the whole time. Like a cool 30 minutes of it.
It was very
his
intense.
his mime skills are through the roof. We're gonna take a very, very, very short break. I'm gonna mandate a maximum 3-minute break as we have a lot to talk about for our upcoming for the tournament that just happened, the PAX Invitational. We have a lot to unpack from that tournament. A lot of teams rising and falling, and we'll jump into the power rankings as well. So we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. This is Valoranting. Don't leave. I promise. I'll be very upset. Don't leave me. Never. Okay, bye. Welcome back to Valoranting. I'm WTFmoses, joined by Pansy and Velly. And now it's time for the meat and potatoes of the broadcast, where we get to jump into the latest esports happenings in Valorant. And we were both lucky enough. Velly was unfortunately unavailable. He was, high in the Swiss Alps drinking champagne with his gaggle of ladies. So let's, well, actually, there's no ladies there. He is getting married this weekend, so we probably shouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah.
There's the street wedding is going to be like a chalk outline of the corpse of Velly from
Exactly that.
So
need a new guest next week.
Why have you thrown him in the trouble, man? What have you done?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I'm well aware that brides are probably very calm within the last couple of weeks before their wedding. So let's let's talk about the PAX Invitational that happened over the weekend. It was a very, very exciting tournament. Lots to talk about. Here is how it went down. Now, there's a couple of things to break out immediately from the quarterfinals, especially. T1 getting 2-0'd by Homeless was really interesting. And unfortunate if you're a T1 fan, grasping onto the threads of why your team is the best in North America. And then you also have it does not reflect in the bracket, but a very close series between Envy and TSM. Sentinels and Gen G, I think, was interesting, but realistically, as we went through the quarterfinals, unfortunately, Homeless could not keep the dream alive and went down to Cloud9 2-0, and Sentinels, in a relative surprise, 2-0'd TSM. Now that one was interesting for a couple of different reasons, in that it was an absolute bloodbath. TSM, I think, posted up 7 total rounds against Sentinels, who then went on to 3-1 Cloud9 in a relatively, I don't want to say easy, but it was a commanding victory for Sentinels. So that was really exciting. Pansy, give me your thoughts on the weekend before we jump into the detail.
Overall, as just a very broad start, I think we're seeing a potential meta swing, which is great. I think we've slowly chipped away from the double ops are OP. I think they're incredibly viable still, but we've seen the utility used in the correct manner, which is something that I was waiting to see for some time, especially out of NA, is really in form. It's in vogue. We're seeing those kind of agents being picked that complement that. Phoenix a great deal more. He's almost locked into most compositions now, which is excellent, even alongside Omen as well. So you get that kind of double blind flash, whichever way you want to look at it. Even a bit of Breach coming through as well, which is great for me. I love seeing people using this utility in a manner that's kind of shifted the meta away from just those ops popping off and kind of quelling them a little bit. But, still obviously viable, but it's going to ask more out of those individuals to deliver on. And we're just seeing like a slightly more well-rounded North American scene, which I'm very, very happy with. Overall, yeah, I think it's just a little bit of a meta shift to some better utility usage, a little less dependent on individuals having crazy games. It can still be a game changer, but it's harder to just depend on that. You need that little bit extra, which I think we saw in droves from the Sentinels, but also Cloud9 definitely have a good couple of set plays that are very hard for people to handle. So yeah, overall, just a really good scene. It's starting to become less of that one horse race. It was a little bit of a tearaway for one team, and now it's kind of like, okay, we've got potentially 4, even 5 very competitive teams now, if not more.
So I was kind of put in a position, especially headed into that finals, where I wanted to make an accurate prediction. Okay, and I made a little joke. Okay, just a tiny little joke that obviously has backfired in my face. So let's take a look at my prediction for the finals, as I'm sure I'll be seeing these clips for a long time afterward. Cloud9 loses this series. There is no way that Cloud9 loses this series. There is no way that Cloud9 loses this series. There is no way that Cloud9 loses this series. There is no way that Cloud9 loses. There's a reason why this clip is 4 seconds long. Yeah, exactly. There's only this. So I don't want to talk about it, but I had my bases covered, and now I've learned a terrible lesson about clips. Is that apparently you can shave them all the way down to make me look like a clown. So
what did you say?
So anyway,
before that, just trying to remember.
Immediately before
before
I said that, I think the words were, "There is no way that Sentinels loses this series," and then I said the other way, and then that's what happened. So shout out to the production, and that actually came off of Twitter, which was the first response to the Sentinels win tweet. So shout out to that guy as well. But yeah, it was Sentinels who ended up taking the final, and it was a very it was illuminating. We saw a lot from Sentinels, specifically their creativity, their teamwork, and ultimately the rise of players like Sick and Dapper, who really, when we started talking, and Shazam had a great weekend as well. The whole team was firing on all cylinders, but Sick and Dapper especially had very critical moments. One of them being here in this clutch in the post plant. It was just incredible to watch how Sick was able to kind of dive around and ultimately clutch this roundup, which was pivotal for him. So Pansy, walk us through your angle on why Sentinels was playing so well.
Honestly, I'm gonna kind of put it out there. There's definitely some, I don't want to say bad blood, but there's definitely a rivalry with some of the Sentinels players, or a Sentinel player specifically, and some of the TSM players. You know, North America's got a very fiery background. If you roll it back to kind of the Rank S-esque games, the kind of, you know, mixes that used to go on, there's definitely a past there. And I mean, Sentinels were fired up. Every single player was popping off. And I mean, we've seen glimmers of the hope leading up till now. I think everyone looked at Sentinels as the team that was on the rise. We were wondering, okay, is this going to be the peak moment that we get to see them at their best? Which it certainly turned out to be a really good moment for them. But honestly, every single player was playing outstandingly well. I think, to me, you know, Dapper, even in the pistol rounds, the value he brought was outstanding. I mean, the amount of work these guys put up was great. I mean, I'm thoroughly impressed from start to finish with that roster. You know, Zoms, you could look at every player and pick out like 10 moments where they were game changing. I think they had a fire lit under them and they played to that, right? You know what I mean? It's like you saw those little bits of hope here and there, and you're like, okay, they're coming together. That's cool. And they brought it together in the best possible scenario, not only to, you know, in the finals against Cloud9, but that TSM game was basically, that was a huge statement to North America, is okay, this is the changing of the guard now. We've seen TSM hit their peak. They went for a good run on it. Now let's see what the Sentinels do on their peak. Do they have the same sort of run, or is this the one-off, you know, high point? I don't think so. I think this is going to be a good run from the Sentinels, but it's a nice change of the guard here.
Velly, what did you think of the series, and more specifically than the side from Cloud9?
On the side of Cloud9?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, yo, this is gonna be rough, and they're gonna put me in a box of Pansy with this one. But Vice and Shinobi, they had a really rough day, and it was really hard to see. But you know, you're talking about two players that do a lot of the dirty work for this team. So then you look at the front line, and it's the fact that this Sentinels roster really did their best against Tens, Relics, and the rest of them, and made them look like, hey, you know what? You might be the best individual player in NA. But us as a team, we're just so much more better. And we will overpower you in every facet of the way. And you even saw different agent switches where even last map, and I felt bad seeing it, but even Relics going on Raze and him having a really bad day. It's like, damn, yo, like this Sentinels team came to play. At the end of the day, Sentinels, they let everybody know they were daddy, and it was just unfortunate that Cloud9 was in the way.
I think that Cloud9, the big standout for me was definitely Mitch. This is a guy that is the most recent signing, even though he's been playing with the team for quite some time. You know, it was Tens and Relics, and then finally Mitch got signed. He had a really great tournament. I think he really showed out. Even though Cloud9 had some high profile wins for sure. I mean, I think the Homeless series where it really was not much of a. It was okay. I think that Homeless obviously had a lot of disadvantages. But what stood out to me was just the speed. Obviously, Tens is probably is insane. He's the clickiest man clicker that ever clicked, as far as we have in Valorant right now. He's all over the place. He's very quick. There was moments there where, man, there was this one moment where he had this like insane flick on this site that we're watching right now, and then just like rando pistol spam to smoke and got another kill within like seconds. It was insane, but it was all informed because I went back and watched it because it looked a little sus the first time I saw it. But you go back and watch it and you unpack how he's able to kind of take all this information in. And really you can see just what kind of player he is and why so many of the top players in the world point to him as the best player in the world. So for C9 and Sentinels, it was interesting, but I want to dial it back a little bit to what Pansy just touched on, was the fact that when TSM and Sentinels played, they got Sentinels slapped TSM. It was not pretty.
Yep.
And I'm a TSM fan. I like watching the team. I think they bring a lot to the table. Wardell's personality is really fun. But there is bad blood on that team between Sentinels and TSM, and it's very real. I thought it was a joke at first. But I mean, we have Hazed, I think, joking on Twitter, calling Sentinels trash or saying that they're a bad team. But for those of you who don't know, and Velly, I'm not sure if you know the history here, so I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Pansy the other day, someone else the other day regarding this bad blood. But if you were to think that Shazam and Wardell didn't like each other, why do you think that would be? Probably something from a LAN somewhere, or maybe some trash talk on Twitter, maybe the proverbial, love triangle. Maybe there's a girl involved. What do you think would be the reason why these two guys would be still mad at each other for this long?
I don't know. How long has it been? I don't know about the beef.
Years.
No shit.
They don't like each other
over like the same e-girl or something.
Yeah, so you have no idea, right? Let's just
I have no idea. Like, I'm lost. I'm completely lost.
It would have to be something egregious, right? Not something as simple as, maybe TS or Wardell suggesting that Shazam threw like a single FPL game like 3 years ago or something like that.
Are you serious? That was it?
That's the reason. Apparently, according to the rumor mill, or at least those who are in the know, which is the people who post on Reddit, is the fact that Shazam and Wardell had beef from an FPL game like a million years ago. I think the story goes is that Wardell suggested that Shazam was throwing an FPL game, and that turned out to be not the case, I would assume. And that spiraled into a years-long blood feud that has now changed games and followed them to Valorant. So
are you serious?
Maybe
I would be pissed off too, though.
Yeah, well, fair enough, but I mean, like, it's so long and so trivial that it is now turned into this bad blood between Sentinels and TSM that goes back all the way. It's nice to have these rivalries. I fully encourage it. Hate each other. It makes it so much more interesting for me. But Velly, it's a bit. Go on, Pansy.
I mean, this is just North American rank S garbage that happens. Like,
I agree.
And it happens in EU, don't get me wrong. Like, I think NA is just like everyone knows about it because in English speaking, it's a little bit easier to kind of pick up on. And the personalities are personalities. Like, I actually don't mind people having a bit of a back and forth, right? I like a bit of a rivalry. Yeah. Is there a limit? Yes. Do you have to be aware that your crazed fans will go beyond and potentially, be kind of shitty to other people? Yes. So there is that level of like taking some accountability that you don't go too far on this. But do I give a fuck about some trash talking? No, like, fucking bring it on. I like that. And it's good fun. Like, I am more for that. But it's like that balance, right? It's like, just as long as it's not gone to a stage where it's hurtful to people. Because exactly, like, that's a thing. Because as I said, like, no, you're not completely accountable to what your fans can potentially do, but you also have to be mindful of it. I think in these days, like, the community's been through a shitload recently, and I don't want to encourage like any fan to be like, well, fuck you. Like, I mean, Jesus, even in CS:GO right now, some 16-year-old kid got accused by cheating by one of the most established players in the game who has a very, very avid audience. And it's like, as I said, most times you could probably say that and be like, hey, that's a little dodgy. But then you've got to be careful that you have to also keep in mind your fans, literally doxed his family. They went after him, death threats. I mean, crazy shit. And it's like, you've got to be a little aware of that. But I think, again, this is kind of a little bit inside the game. We know this because we'll look into it. But you've got to keep it in mind, right? It's like that little bit of accountability.
You got to keep it in the game. Keep it in the game. It's like,
correct.
I'm going to go back to the old well. It's like, and when you play like in basketball, I have some of the angriest and closest I've been to like strangling another human being has been because of like basketball. But as soon as the game ends, all those feelings go away. It's all over. It's gone because it's in the context of the game. Yeah. So as long as you can keep it on the. Of course, because you can see the other person it's a lot different. But my hope and the reason I bring that reference up is because these guys have been around a long time and they're adults and that kind of stuff. So as long as you're not brigading, trying to make it personal, keep it in the context of the game, that's great. But ultimately, I think it's probably a bit personal now potentially between Shazam and Wardell or the sides, whatever you want to, however you want to paint it. I hope that it doesn't go to like a bad place, because that's not good for anybody. Go on, Pansy.
Sure. No, and I mean, like, I used to play Call of Duty 4, and I was the most toxic person in the world. Like, in game, I was fucking horrible. And COD 4, especially on PC, had such a UK based player base as well, like towards the high end too, which is very surprising in any fucking esports. We're praying for Fish 123, don't get me wrong. But
Right.
it was rare. But I mean, when you get UK players, you also get a shitload of horrible banter. You get a shitload of nastiness, which is very funny, because at the end of the day, we'd go to the bar afterwards and have a drink. So it was never anything beyond in the game. I mean, we used to have these fucking awful garbage binds. Like, literally, I think my favorite one that was most infuriating, that used to make people literally like smash desks, was you peek, you lose, but everything is spelt wrong. So not only do you get them on the fact, like, imagine you're like, again, if you peek someone, you just get banged out and you just get a spam of you peek, you lose, just smash through to you. You're fucking pissed. We'd do it at LANs. You'd hear people fucking kicking off. But again, you move on, you get over it, you get into the next game. So I think there is a really good place for fun banter, good bit of rivalry. I think it's why that TSM Sentinels game was such a cool idea in especially the semifinals towards the higher end of the tournament, because that, as much as you may pretend that these rivalries don't matter to you, you want to fucking win. You know what I mean? Like, Shazam's definitely had a lot of like judgment in the way he approaches games, and potentially his character. Same with Wardell. I mean, a lot of people love and hate them. They're very personality-driven players.
Yeah,
and
polarizing.
again, if you love them, exactly, it's great. You love a bit of that. Bring that fire on. But then you'll also get the negative side of things, where people will be like, "Fuck you! You're just arrogant. You don't know shit. You're just toxic."
Yeah.
So it's like that balance has to be there. And again, like for Shazam specifically, in my mind, I think that's a really big step for him. Because again, you look at these rosters, right? So like TSM went for the safe route of just like, here's your CS boys, here's your rank S boys. They played together before. They're all spicy. They're all, pretty big in the CS world. Shazam goes and takes a bit of a risk with, Overwatch players coming in, mixing it up here and there. It was a little bit of like a question mark on their performance to start with too. And now the proof's finally coming through, right? So it's a big growth point for them.
There is no better way to like, and going back to the sports thing, like, you can be mad as mad as you want, but if I'm dropping a game winner over top of you at the end, I'm letting you know about it. And I hope that, when you're in a position, especially against a rival, and you slap them 2-0, and they put up less than 10 rounds on you, yeah, you're going to be on top of whatever argument that comes your way. Just be like, scoreboard, motherfucker. Like, that's all you got to do. So I sincerely hope that we get a little bit more spice. It was one thing I desperately wanted when we were playing and when we were casting PUBG, but we could never get it. So to have it now this early, shout out to these guys. Keep yelling at each other. I love it. Let's talk about some of the surprises from the PAX Invitational. This was actually some of the better part and some of the more interesting aspects of the Invitational, specifically Team Envy. Now, this is a squad that damn near took this round off of TSM.
Like
Unfortunately, I do too.
Yeah.
And you know what? They took TSM the distance as well in the group stages. So this is a team that can definitely hang. And, for those of you who don't remember, Team Envy is Together We Are Terrific. They did get signed just before the PAX Invitational.
Mm-hmm.
And Pansy, what stood out to you rather for this squad?
It was their defensive side that I loved, that double aggression over on A-Long. They were just playing off the back of what Mame can do. The guy is nuts with an op as well, bear in mind. Like, he's a super good player in that, but it wasn't just his show. They were able to shut down the economy pretty handily of TSM for a while. Obviously, TSM pipped them to the post eventually in OT, but a very close series. I think Envy is the team that was always going to be not a dark horse, because that's underselling them, but they weren't the household name when you looked at a bracket. But could they potentially take maps away from the big teams? 100%. So when they get a bit more consistent, that team has a really good mentality towards the game. It seems they've got like a nice theory piece. I love the way they take map control on defensive sides. It's all those kind of key elements that I'm like, I really like it in what I see from the Sentinels, and I see it from someone like, Envy as well. I'm like, fuck yeah, this is exactly what I want to see. Nice map control, nice kind of playing off each other, shutting down the opponent's economy, keeping it super quiet so they can't get those ops out. again, TSM got put through the ringer with teams who really kept them away from ops. Like they were struggling to get into their comfort zone against some of these teams, which is credit to the other team for doing that so well. It was a pretty brutal game. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what Envy do now. You know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, you've impressed, you've looked good. The results weren't there yet, but this was your first debut as Envy, so this is awesome. This is a really good starting point.
Good. Going out in quarters is not going to be the best. Obviously, no one wants to go out in quarterfinals, especially if you're T1, by the way. For Envy to go out in the way that, honestly, I would rather go out the way Envy did than T1. I'm going to get now. I'm going to be a caster bias if I'm not careful. So Velly, what did you think from what you saw this matchup, and more specifically what Pansy mentioned is TSM kind of getting neutralized around their opping players?
Yeah, so I didn't watch that game. As you know, I was really busy with the wedding getting set up. Right. So I only watched a handful of games. I didn't watch that at all. But I did watch a few of those Envy games. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm a big fan of TSM. I like the Sentinels a lot. And Envy is now a team that has my eyes all up on them. And just the way that they were dismantling teams at a time was fucking beautiful. I really love the game against Way to French, how they just tore their asses up. And it was just beautiful to see. And I'm just really happy that we're now starting to see all this talent really start to line up. Because if you guys didn't remember, they got clapped by the Sentinels during the Post Invitational, and it was really bad. So the fact that they shrugged that off, had that short-term memory, came back, and was on this level? What? Yep. Envy, I say we give them a little bit of time, and they're going to be extremely competitive. They're not going to be a middle of the pack team at all.
I think they're in the top 5 already. We'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to the power rankings, but I think Envy really showed out. I think they did a great job. Go on.
I want to say this. I was laughing because when they went against Way to French, I really love that game just because it was a stomp fest. No one dropped more than 9 deaths on Envy. Nobody died more than 9 times on Envy. And then on the other team, this is the last map, by the way. This will put the nail in the coffin. Like, this is when you're supposed to go all out. Only one player on Way to French had double-digit kills. That's dominance, baby. Oof. This team is special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love to see, a team that, like, especially this early in the scene, you want to have as many top teams as possible. I don't want it to be like all TSM or all Sentinels. Yeah. I want it to be a battle every time. By the way, I just see Shazam and Stick in the chat. If you guys are ready to come on and talk about this TSM rivalry, just hit me up on Twitter. Okay, we'll get you on here ASAP. Give you the mic. So for the other surprise here for us, obviously, was Homeless. Homeless is had a bit of a magic run. This is a mixed team, and instead of talking about the final result, they did get kind of dismantled by C9. I think that maybe just the lack of experience kind of came back to, not lack of experience, but the lack of team experience came back to bite them a little bit against C9. So there's 2 angles that I look at this at. The first one is Homeless did not have an answer for Cloud9, but on Ascent specifically against T1, it was dominating. Now they got 6 rounds up, but Ascent felt like it was never out of control for Homeless, which against a team that has the caliber of players that T1 has, it was very strange to watch. Now, I'm not a pro player. I don't know what it's like on, any given day you can just lose a series on a map. It can happen. But the way it happened was what was concerning to me. Pansy, I'll lean on your experience here. What was the key, I guess? Like what stood out to you in this T1 and Homeless series?
Honestly, I think the individuals were terrifying to me. Just because I don't know them, and I think sometimes the way they play the game is just a little bit different, but the theory is so right. I love the concept of what Superman did for that team as well. I think he was such a fun element because, again, he's just a player that wasn't in my wheelhouse. He came from Crossfire, and I messaged Def, like, where the fuck did you find this guy? I literally said, who the fuck is Superman? This guy's nuts. And he was like,
where is he?
Ex-Crossfire. Def trialed the whole team, and he was the gem out of the roster. So clearly the guy is nuts. But the whole team has great potential as well. This is what I like about Homeless. They're gonna, I think they're going to be the next, I don't want to say the next Envy, but in the same sort of vein that they're a danger team when you get to those quarters. They're a danger team in the later stages of a tournament where they could definitely cause problems. For now, I think there's still that element that they need those, very powerful individuals to have very big games. But once they surround that with a nice complement of set pieces, they can fall back on some more kind of scripted ideas. I mean, some was great as well. There were so many big individual plays, but I'd like to see them have that depth when maybe they're not having a crazy game, when they can fall back on those set plays and not have to bank on just those individuals to have some big moments, because Superman was definitely that. He was playing out of his mind, and it was insanely good to see. So I think they're a future team. This was a great result to get them on the radar, to get everyone going, okay, there's a lot there. But I want, maybe the next tournament or the one after is where they become a bigger threat. But this will get them pumped up, right? You're that team. You've just got this roster together. It's the first time you get to, push through those groups. You're looking pretty dangerous. And I think this plays a little bit to 100 Thieves being knocked out, because losing, series to them suddenly doesn't look so bad when you look at it with context, because those guys are pretty fucking nuts. So I think they're a bit of an unknown quantity. I want to see in the next maybe 2 tournaments how they shape up. What style do they bring?
Go on, Velly.
Let me ask this, Moses. I know you're a host and you ask the questions. But with teams like 100 Thieves and also like T1 having a disappointing exit, do you look at these unsigned teams and these star players that come out of nowhere, like Superman? Well, came out of nowhere to me, okay? Like Superman. Do you look at picking up those players to better your roster? Do you pick these players apart like one by one?
The thing that's super interesting to me, specifically about Homeless, is the fact that their big brain guy is Psalm. He's the dude who's kind of, looking to exploit, do these other things. And the one thing that Psalm has over everybody else who's unsigned is millions of dollars. Yeah. So, I mean, he won the Fortnite World Cup. Obviously, you can't ride on that forever, but a $2 million prize pool or $2 million earnings is more than most gamers make ever. Like, ever total. Yeah. Like, very few people have made more than $1 million playing esports, especially as individuals. Maybe teams have, but I mean, Lauren, just for reference, I mean, Australis SK was some of the most successful teams ever. You might have to look it up while we chat, but I mean, these guys are making, how long would it take a team in Counter-Strike for an individual to breach over $1 million in prize pool? Probably years, right?
To be fair, it's a little different. CS is about salaries. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're all salaried up.
Yeah.
It's less about that one-off tournament. I think it's too established. But outside of Counter-Strike, you're very rarely going to find a player who's kind of hit that high peak. But the guy seems to have to transition to a great deal of games. He seems to have that ability. He knows how to get good, and the theories is how to do it. So I think he's definitely a danger player. And if he's passionate about a game, he's going to grind it. You've already seen that in 2, potentially 3 titles. You know what I mean? So it's like he's a danger man for sure.
I think so too, and Psalm is a good dude. You can tell he's smart, and really I hope that Homeless has the ability to stay together for at least a little while. But there is a chance that they swap out a player here, and that's the nice thing about having a team like that isn't locked in. Just like them getting picked apart, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so? It's bound to happen. I mean, there's so many orgs to go around, like Lauren was talking about earlier with their European peoples, and it's like standout performances like this from an upset team. Holy shit! I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. I'm going to call it now.
Well, I'm trying to get through this last thing before we jump to the Viper changes, which is 100 Thieves. No, it's all good. It's not your fault, dude. I'm talking my ass off, dude. So as far as the 100 Thieves stuff is concerned, I think that we're in a bit of I think we're starting to hit the peak of the question mark around this team. Now, obviously, when they got signed, I was super over the moon for the PUBG players, but I said it during my little rant before. It's a performance-based environment. Now, Hiko's had internet problems. They're changing their IGL. Evaluate has been struggling a little bit. Venerated is a fragger, so they're gonna change the IGL from Venerated to Evaluate. So they're making some adjustments, but adjustments are normally the precursor to team change. So I would expect, and Hiko does not want to sit in his chat and listen to the fact that his team is trash every day, all day, and the free Hiko stuff in the chat. It's going to eventually get to the point where 100 Thieves is going to look at their roster and say, we're 100 Thieves. We don't have the fucking time to be seen as a subpar team. So considering the amount of talent that's out there, the urgency in which they need to perform, I fully expect that 100 Thieves needs to have a very good next showing, or change is probably around the corner. And I hope that's not the case, but you know what? It's esports, baby. You got to perform. Let's talk about the Viper changes coming in. For Viper, this was a big question mark. She was buffed, like wholly buffed. There was no doubt in my mind that she is significantly better than she was before. And we had the good graces. And just as you guys can kind of see here, we talked about this last week. But we did see, and we're graced by the fact that Tens decided to pick Viper in the final match or in the final series against Sentinels. It did not go great. I'm not going to lie. It did not go great. And ultimately, there was some I don't know if you want to call it urgency in changing things up with Viper. Obviously, Tens can do what he wants, but this is what you get when you're trying to use Viper creatively. There was only a little corridor for them to walk through in this smoke, and they did lose 2 here. Ultimately, I don't think this worked at all. But it was interesting to see. So Velly, I mean, these off-brand picks, for lack of a better term, you know, is this a, well, let's just try it out as a last-ditch effort, or do you think this was something that C9 actually wanted to actually do seriously?
I feel like they tried it. It worked in scrims, but we're talking about practice. Yeah. And then they brought it to the big games, and it just didn't work. It's practice. Viper isn't an easy agent to use. So mastering her is not going to be easy. I mean, let's be honest. We can't name one person that's great with Viper. Maybe it's just the character. Maybe it's just Mixwell's the only person that's good with her. We don't know yet. I still think it's too early to really say shit like that.
Yeah, I know Sliggy was discussing the viability to Viper quite some time ago before some of these buffs, so I wouldn't be surprised to see potentially Fish123 considering the idea of it. Again, the thing is, like, if anyone looks at it from a purely theory crafting side of things, she does look good. But implementing it, we need that one player to champion it well enough. And taking Tens away from Jet, I think, is always going to be a bit of a problem because he loses some of that individual viability that he has that he can just kind of go off. But I'm looking to see if potentially we see some of those teams who like to kind of play around with the meta. I'm wondering if someone like Existence might consider it. He was certainly toying with the concept at one point. Whether or not he plays it, but his team might. We'll see. I think it takes one player to make it look really good, and then suddenly people realize how viable it can be. Not even one player, but one team. I want to see how the theory crafting people who can make it work practically. Because again, we can sit here and discuss how potentially viable she can be until we see it at like a good tier being played. It's still going to remain a bit of a question mark. I think she needs a bit more time to be worked into play as well. As the meta's been shifting, I think teams have been focusing probably on that rather than introducing another agent. So if the team feels that they can do it, I think she could work out. But as said, I don't think it's even the next tournament. I think it might be the one after that, or you know what I mean? Like it needs time to be really, really worked through. So then, yes, you might get a Viper pick who looks good. It may still be specific to map, but we've got a very small map pool, so it could still work. It could get you that potential third, map, or if it's a best of 5, give you the ability to go through. That's why I don't mind the fact that Cloud9 actually picked it up. They needed something that could potentially change their favor on that map, because statistically it didn't favor them, and they needed something in that final series, otherwise they were done for. I would have liked someone else to potentially pick it up rather than
I was gonna say that.
Tens, because he's so good on Jet, it's hard to see him being the one to facilitate that play. I'd have liked someone else maybe to roll with it and him still play that Jet role, but again, it's going to change the rosters a fair bit.
Yep.
I'm just wondering if there's going to be an opportunity before like the bigger tournaments. I know Pittsburgh Knights have a tournament coming up that's like 20K, and we also have the Faze Invitational that was just announced. I'm wondering if, since the Faze Invitational is in a couple of weeks, if we'll maybe see something by the time that tournament comes around. But ultimately, it's going to be a slow. Like these things come slowly, and I imagine that if we're going to see regular Viper picks, we're going to need probably at least 2 to 3 weeks of real practice time. In order to I guess see if it's going to be viable at all, and ultimately that's going to be determined by these players just messing around in ranked and stuff like that. We do have some thoughts actually from Zoms from Sentinels talking about the interesting pick that Tens made choosing Viper. Let's hear from him.
Zoms, come. Let's talk Viper, because we've discussed a lot of Viper. They picked it there. What were your thoughts and the team's thoughts when Viper popped up? Did you feel like you could comfortably work around it? Was there any worries or anything like that?
Instantly knew we won. Come on, Ten's on Viper. He needs to be on Jet or Raze only.
Ooh! There we go.
That was just obvious.
Like,
they can only cheese kills,
Oh! Snap, son! Damn! I'm starting to think that Sentinels is just out here trashing, man. They're out here, they're talking some shit, and I love that to see that from Zoms, especially. Obviously, it's the final interview. They just won the tournament. They can say whatever the hell they want. But yeah, I mean, I think there's some. I think that there's some real good rivalry starting to build, and shout out to Tens getting called out for his jet maining ways. So. I'm not sure. Any closing thoughts on Viper or Pansy?
I want to see it. I want to see it done well. I want to see who becomes the champion of it. I think in Europe, Fish 123 will probably be the team that makes it look the best soon enough, unless there's a specialty team out there who's been working on it since the update. Just because I know that they theory crafted it, I know they were toying with the idea of it very early on, even before the changes. So I wonder if that comes back into a consideration now. NA, I'm not too sure. I think they're all going to be playing to the new meta that's been set by the Sentinels if they want to come up with it, or even have to adapt further. So I think Viper then gets pushed aside in place of, okay, we've got to get that Phoenix in the roster now because we can't allow double ops to be a problem anymore. So we'll see. I think it's a thing for the future. We can't expect it to be super quick.
Velly, final thoughts on Viper picks?
Don't put your best player on Viper when statistically you're not going to win that match. That's literally all I got on my mind.
Fair enough. And this kind of brings me back to the Faze roster. I hope that we have a team of this is just my perception. Like I wasn't an Overwatch pro, but I just assume those guys are going to be more interested in trying new things and agent synergies and stuff like that. So I really do hope that when Faze comes out and announces their full roster, that there's a heavy Overwatch influence, and to see what kind of strats a team like that could put together with the different agents as the changes come in. Let's move on now to the power rankings, and this is something that I've been kind of taking on myself. I think very, very long and hard at these things, but let's just kind of go through it. I'll give you my reasoning. So Sentinels to me was a team on the rise, and a high profile tournament win, taking out TSM Cloud9 on the way to a victory. That to me is enough to have them atop this week's power rankings as the #1 team in North America. TSM dropping out of the tournament in semis to the eventual winners. Considering their pedigree, the amount of times they've been victors in the past, the fact that they're out there playing a lot, I do expect that if we ran that series back 10 times, TSM comes out maybe 40 to 50% of the time based on the results from their first match, depending on the maps and all, any given Sunday, that kind of stuff. So they're second. Cloud9, similar team. I bumped them up to 3 because they've kind of indicated that the 5 they're running right now will likely be the 5 we'll seeing from them in the future as well. So the fact that they were able to, grind through and have been practicing out there and showcasing their skills, and the fact that TenZ is on their team was enough for me to put them at 3. Gen G, they're definitely on the down rank. They did put up one game against Sentinels in their series. They have won recently. They've got a good team that has been playing together for quite some time, and they have a good overall team strategy. They're not really relying on any one player, and they're still putting up decent results now and again, and not to mention winning now and again. So they're 4th for me. And because of the fact that Envy was able to take T1 the distance in groups, and was able to do the same against TSM, they again are a team that has been impressing me. They have a much longer pedigree. As Together We Are Terrific. They've been playing in the tournaments as well. So for me, that was enough for Envy to edge out T1 for that 5th spot on the power ranking. So I'll start with you, Pansy. What do you think of the power rankings here?
I think it's a very fine line between TSM and Cloud9. Cloud9's recent results, especially with that 2nd place just now, is pretty good. It's I think one more tournament with a top 2 finish, 100% 2nd place. They pipped TSM to the post there, but I think the top 3 is pretty spot on. Gen G are definitely still challenges. I'd say Envy, I'd have still liked one more tournament from them. But I think it's that 50-50. Do you wait one more tournament, or do you put credit to how far they took the series and how close they were, even when they did lose eventually, which I think is a fair assessment considering TSM were up in 2nd. They took TSM into OT, just barely lost out. But again, I would have liked maybe one more tournament from Envy, but otherwise I think that's pretty fair thus far, as to what I think it should be shaping up as. Yeah, I think that's pretty solid.
Velly, thoughts on the power rankings?
All right, this is the way I would do it. All right, Moses. All right, pay attention, man.
Okay.
Sentinels #1 easily. 2nd place, I would give it to my favorite team, TSM. But TSM, they've been disappointing me lately, man. I love Wardell. I still think he's the best in NA. But I might have to make sure that 2nd spot goes to Cloud9. And I'm not just talking about what happened recently. I'm talking about what happened this month. I'm talking about recent memory. Look at the post invitational, the way that Cloud9 performed. They beat TSM. Cloud9 went all the way to 2nd place, top 2. They're showing that they can actually perform when the lights are on them. 3rd place, I'm going to give it to TSM, but Gen G is going to be right behind them. I feel like Gen G is, they're not, do you even call them a sleeper if they're in 4th place?
They're a team, they're like the, man, they're like the 8th seed in the playoffs that sometimes goes on a run. You know what I mean?
And I feel like that run is the inevitable at times. Like they can flip that switch. I feel like if someone said Gen G could win this game, I'd be like, you're not wrong. That's the way I feel about them. Gen G is gonna be my 4th place team. 5th place, I don't know. I think it's a toss up. I really think middle of the pack is a few teams in total. Well, who do I want it to be? I want it to be way to French. That's gonna be my toss up from 5. My bad, baby. I like them. I like them.
Okay, you can like them. That's we'll let you do your own power rank this time. We'll fight over it. We'll get the American Gladiator sticks out and start going at it. But
let's go.
You know what, man?
I'm going to address. Though?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, realistically, power rankings are about recent perception. Okay, and now I'm going to address the T1 fans here, because this is the number one number one amount of shit that I get when it comes to these power rankings. Where's T1? Well, you know what? I've been saying the same thing. Where is T1? Okay, so here's the lead up into this next tournament was very important. So T1, Skadoodle stopped streaming. I'm not sure if Brack stopped entirely. Food crashes, all these guys. It was kind of spotty. So Skadoodle was like offline. He was MIA for like 22 days or something on a stream. And for a guy like Skadoodle, who's pulling in 6,000 plus viewers on his stream, that's a big deal. Considering how much pressure is on this squad. Not to mention they do have probably the most pressure out of anyone else. They have likely the highest payroll. They have the biggest names, a ton of skill, and they're not really showing up to tournaments that often. So that's the number one thing that I really ding T1 for, is at least up until recently they were not playing in as many tournaments. Now, what the reasoning is behind that, if they don't feel it's worth it, or if they have schedule conflicts or whatever, there was a reason why I was dinging them, is because they weren't showing up. They really only have 3 now, or maybe 4 total credits to their team as far as competition's concerned. One of them was Twitch Rivals. We have the T1 Nerd Street Gamers Invitational, and then we have the Pulse Invitational that came after that. They didn't play in that. And then we have this tournament, the PAX Invitational. So if you're going to go into the grind mode, you're going to turn off your stream for 20 plus days. You better not be going out to a mixed team in groups. That is my opinion. And if you're going out to a mixed team in groups in it wasn't close. It was a 2-0. I mean, it didn't feel close. Maybe the scoreline it was not as reflective of that, but it didn't feel close when I was watching it. Not to mention they dropped to TSM, who ultimately, if you think about it, is kind of a fragger team. They're not really doing any innovation. So if you're T1, you got these big brains on your squad. How are you going to tell me that you're one of the best teams in the world if you're not putting up the results? Now, we can go on the fact that, and I will admit, this team is extremely talented. They have a great coach as well, but we just don't know anything about them. I don't know what their mental makeup is like. Is the team gelling? Is Skadoodle happy on the team? Is he happy to be performing again? I'm trying to put myself in the mindset and just trying to observe what T1 is showing us. And really what they're showing us is that they show up sometimes and they don't perform frequently. So maybe I'm wrong. Am I wrong? Am I wrong, Pansy?
No, I think people just kind of get hung up on the group results. But then you look further forward and see what happened, further down the line. And I put more value in Envy's loss to TSM, for example, in the most recent tournament, it being OT, some very close games. Their level is increasing. They're having some very good results, even if they aren't necessarily wins, in comparison to what happened with T1 and Homeless, for example. So let's kind of parallel those two results. I'd probably put more stock and more credit towards what Envy did in that regard than how T1 played against Homeless. So I think, again, group stages I put in a bit of a box, if I'm honest, because again, if you're gonna get through, you're gonna get through, as much as that's a very anti-competitive mentality. It is what it is. I look at the harder games and I look at the opponents, and I'm gonna put that as a head-to-head in the most recent one. I would say that was a better game to kind of judge the current position of someone like Envy. Now, again, I think it's debatable. You could throw Immortals in there, potentially. You could throw even Homeless in there, potentially. It depends what you're weighting as value points. I think we look at the most recent head-to-heads. I think that Envy is very much a 50-50 call on that one. I wouldn't even potentially... the way I balance it, I'd put maybe Immortals in towards that myself. I would put maybe Homeless as a consideration towards it, and T1 as well. Those 3 teams could definitely be there. Out of the most recent tournament, I was more impressed with Envy's result than I was T1's. But that's my hot take. I think we just need to see more of T1 in a more regular way. We need to see that marked improvement over teams that they've consistently dropped results to. Yeah.
I want to see, like, you can stream all day and that kind of stuff, but really, and this is again, I'm not a pro team. I'm not a pro player. I'm not a pro coach. But when I made these rankings, what I think about is like the eyeball test. Just the what am I seeing? And what I'm seeing now is they did lose to arguably a one-dimensional team in TSM. They're not really, like I said, they're not really innovators, right? TSM, but they're very good. They're very skilled. You can be excellent, but they if you're T1, the last place you want to be, and if you're a T1 fan, is you don't want to be arguing whether or not they should be 5th on the power rankings. That's not where you want to be as a T1 fan, as a T1 organization, as a T1 fan. You want to be telling me why they should be 1st or 2nd. And I don't want to count, I don't want to bring money into it. And realistically, this is more dollars and cents and hype and stuff like that. But T1 opened up the wallets to bring Skadoodle and Brax into the fold. And with that big spend comes a big expectation. The same thing with the hype around Brax and Skadoodle as a former major winner in Skadoodle and the prodigy, like the prince that was promised in Brax, if you know what I mean. Okay. So I'm not trying to come down on T1 as a team that is bad. They're certainly not bad. But the expectation versus reality for T1 is vastly different than most of us expected. And if I'm talking about trending, unfortunately right now, T1 is trending downwards and Envy is trending upwards, which is, even though you look at one group result of them beating Envy, it was close. Are you trying to tell me that the T1 Envy match should have been that close where they're going to 10-11 rounds, like 13-11 or something like that? It's close. That's within a couple of rounds of just losing the series. That's not where T1 needs to be, not for their fans, not for their organization, and unfortunately not for the hype they put the situation they put themselves in hype-wise as they entered Valorant. Now, I have full expectations that T1 can turn it around. I'm not saying that they need to blow up the team, but they need to get out there and take the veil away as to we want to see them grow like the same way we saw it together. We Are Terrific eventually grow into Envy, or Cloud9 grow into the form they're at now. Sentinels, we watched them improve because we could see them tournament in, tournament out. I want to see the same thing from T1. That's kind of my take as to why I left them off my top 5.
That's the thing. Like, first things first. Like we criticized the hell out of them for not entering tournaments, and then so not having that experience against competition playing at their best, we're now seeing them fail in groups. I don't think T1 is in a terrible position because they're still having competitive games while losing. It gets to the point where it's like, how much longer can we see this happen until we're going to put you in these tournaments now, like TSM, Gen.G, all these other teams, because everyone's getting better except us at this point. You can stick in there right now without that type of experience. Now imagine if you had that experience. I think group stages would have been drastically different.
I think so too. And I mean, the power rankings and it was mentioned in the chat is, what have you done for me lately? That's how I look at this stuff. So T1, I really do hope that it would be better for everybody if T1 was owning, by the way. I mean, the amount of hype that squad can bring, we had great viewership in this tournament, and I bet you if it was T1, versus Cloud9 in the semis or something like that, it would have been a much more interesting trip for them. So ultimately, it's still early. We have a lot of moving, a lot of shaking, and that's what you like to see. You want to keep it competitive. Pansy, final thoughts on the NA scene as a whole right now?
I think it's in a state of flux. I think we're seeing a meta change. I think that's why the next couple of tournaments we can look at consistency now. I think we've seen that Sentinels has been on a consistent rise. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Same for Cloud9. They've been on a perpetual upward swing, so those two are certainly leading the way. But now it's time for that answer back. Can they continually do this? Is it going to be a consistent element to their progression? Do they stamp their authority? Or do we see the return of the big household names of your TSM T1 kind of fighting back into this? I ignore the likes of Gen.G, Immortals, and such and so on, just because, again, they're a little bit newer into this. Again, looking at them as of late, very good signs, looking pretty good still, Gen.G. Like to see a bit more from them, if I'm honest, but still fine. I think it's just, as said, right now we're looking at kind of I look at two camps in North America. I look at your Cloud9, and I look at your Sentinels as a little bundle. Those two kind of very similar approach to the game and very successful as it stands. I look at the other side, T1, and TSM. And I wait to see if they find their footing to come back in towards the very higher echelons. I don't care about best of 1 results anymore. I hope we're beyond that. I want best of 3 results. I want to see them push through their map pool. I want to see teams taking them further. I want to see if people can still keep that economy down against some of these players, or do they find a way around it? How do then they answer back? So the kind of swing of all of this is now it's time for the TSM, time for your T1 answers. I want to hear what they say. I want to see what they bring in those next couple of games. But other than that, for now, I think it's Cloud9 and Sentinels to keep pushing in the direction they're going.
I agree, and Velly, I'll turn it over to you. Final thoughts on the NA scene as we've kind of talked it to death already.
That was deep. That shit. Damn, Pansy. All I gotta say is right now the way it's looking, the competition is rising. We've been saying for the longest, okay, all these big names, they're here. They have their fancy orgs, their fancy teams. When are the next step gonna come? See it. Homeless. All right. Envy's looking really good. A lot of these players that didn't have all those premier names are now rising and up premier type of players. I don't know if it's me lagging or is it just, but still though, my internet is kind of ghetto right now. I apologize. So I'm gonna make it quick. I'm really excited that things are getting 10 times more competitive now than it was my first time on this show.
I agree. And you know what, Velly? Sometimes your takes are so hot we have to put you in slow motion. So it's a necessary evil. We got to take it. But you know what, man? There's one last thing I want to talk about, which is what's being discussed in the chat right now, which is prize pool. I promise you that prize pools for T1, especially for Skadoodle and Brax and maybe even AZK, are an afterthought when it comes to the reason you're getting out of bed for tournaments. If you're gonna try and tell me, and again, I'm not trying out here to count people's money, but we know what kind of money Sinatra commanded, 20K plus. You better believe that Skadoodle and Brax are in that same kind of area. If you're making that kind of cash and prize pool is the reason you're dodging tournaments, you're not long for this world, in my opinion. You got to get out there. The whole thing about coming back to competition for Skadoodle is about the competition, because I don't think money is a primary concern for him right now. It's always a concern, but if you're making 20 grand a month, let's say, God bless you, dog. You don't really need to be worrying too much. Maybe Food and Crashies are worried about prize pool, but certainly not Skadoodle and Brax. So I really do hope that we get to see more T1 just because we want to see it. But I don't know, dude. I don't know what the thinking is. We haven't heard it from T1, so they're gonna have to come out and tell us. But you know what? I think we kind of nailed it. I think we've kind of encompassed the whole NA scene, and we actually covered everything we have on the Runner Show. So now it's time to say goodbye for the week. So thank you guys so much for watching. Shout out to Pansy and Velly for joining me here once again. You guys are absolute gems, and we can't wait to see you back next week. And for those of you who have been joining us, make sure you're following the channel here at Do Not Peak, and on YouTube at youtube.com/Do Not Peak Entertainment, where you can see the VODs. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, all the places you can find podcasts. So thank you again to Prius for joining in, for giving us this insight as an observer. Make sure you come back and watch us every week, Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, because we don't stay up that late. We're gamers. We go to bed early and on time. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you back. This has been Valoranting. Thank you so much for watching.